Let's.
Oh, good.
I know, but I didn't bring it out.
I wanted to hear that it's inspiring, except
All right, it's about 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to, can everyone hear me okay?
Sorry, we'll wait.
And my fellow board members hear me okay?
Yes.
we're talking about Micah's superlative and nutritious dinner choices.
I told them that I did not bring dinner this time.
That's why I had to recut.
I know,
Yeah,
I was excited to see that.
Not quite your fabulous meals, but.
But I suppose if you'd like to start the meeting, we'd be willing to.
All right, we can come back to it. We'll add it on to the agenda later on. So, first of all, welcome. This is the December 15th Jackson School Board meeting, and we welcome you. We see mostly faces that we know, but just in case, I'm just going to have folks introduce themselves, starting with probably one of the most important people here, Ms. Melissa Donaldson.
I'm Melissa Donaldson, I'm the recording secretary.
Nicole Oz, Jackson School Board.
Melinda Foley Marcello, School Board.
James Glazier, board.
Micah Brown, school board.
Jess Deldala, Chair.
Amy Frechette, Superintendent.
Mike Lee, Business Administrator.
Nicole Bell, Assistant Superintendent. Annie Messing, Principal. Hannah Stimson, Director of Student Services.
And before we get into what is a pretty meaty agenda, we just would like to take a moment to express our deepest condolences to a student who is a very bright light in our district and his fabulous family, and Camden Bailey, and to ask everyone in this moment to take a moment to hold them in the light and to remember that there are many people who are grieving right now, and that of late, unfortunately, both our town and our district, our SAU, have had many losses. And so whatever creed or belief or anything that you have, if we could just take one moment to just send good thoughts to the Bailey family and everyone else that you want to recognize in this moment. And with that, we again welcome you, and we will just say, first of all, thank you for the lovely civil and kind participation in the last meeting. We know that that will continue, and we are hoping for that. It gives us great hope and faith in really the democratic process and all the wonderful civil virtues we're trying to teach our children. So thank you. We do not have a non-public session tonight, correct? Okay, so we will turn to approval.
I'm making a motion to approve the minutes from 11/17/2025.
Second,
I'll second that.
any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous, Melissa. Okay. And we will turn it over to the public for the first round of citizen comments. Yes?
Jennifer Prittle, Jackson resident, and I was just thinking about how awesome it is to hear about what the elementary kids are up to when they go to the school board meeting. And I thought it might be fun for everyone to hear some of the great things that our high school students have been doing, so I have a little note. So I reached out to some of my friends with kids at Kennett, and they couldn't be here tonight because of the basketball game, but they wanted me to share these things with you too. So our students in Jackson are important members of their high school communities. They are talented musicians, athletes, and members of a variety of clubs, including National Honor Society, PALS, which is a mental health club, Radio Report, Student Council, and more. This fall, many of our students participated in athletics, including varsity level. We had football players, golfers, a lot of good hockey players, soccer players, cross-country runners, and many of them received awards. So I just wanted to recognize their awards. So Aubrey Hill received the Most Improved Junior Varsity Field Hockey Award. Her older brother Connor received the Golf Award and was the captain of the team and first-ranked player. Aspen Hazelwood, who is a senior, received the All Academic Award for seniors, which is students who have held an average of 3.2 GPA or higher throughout their academic years in school. They were MVP for field hockey and named a member of the All-Conference 1 team. Her brother Robbie received a varsity letter in football, which enabled him to receive his letter jacket this fall. Trying to think, we also had, I forgot, mountain bikers, and I'm sure that many of them will also be receiving high marks academically when the season closes later this month. So I just wanted to say our kids are doing really great things, and I wanted to make sure everybody heard it. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we will have another round at the end of the meeting, and it's not explicitly stated, but I do want to just let folks know we will be talking about obviously the budget and taxes and things like that tonight. So for those who have asked, that will definitely be covered this evening. Okay, so we next have on the agenda a presentation on open enrollment to be followed by a presentation on the survey. But you want to switch those?
Does it need to be a motion?
Sure.
I make a motion to switch the order and to start with the presentation of the high school survey and contracts and to do open enrollment after that.
Okay, and then we'll just take a second.
Second.
And all in favor? Okay, so let's change that. Okay, thank you. So we'll go to the presentation on due diligence, the survey. So I'll start here, and how the way we will do this evening is that I will get us started. This is not a conversation. This will be us sharing an update, trying to respond to what we heard this last month and at the last meeting. This is a snapshot in time. As you all know, things are happening quickly and in real time, and we have a very active community. So I'll talk a little bit more about how we got into this one, but I invite my fellow board members to jump in at any time because I'm not the be-all and end-all. I just wanted to get us on target. Thanks so much. So, okay, so it bears repeating that we all, regardless of our viewpoints, have a shared priority, which is to ensure every student in Jackson has access to excellent educational opportunities while maintaining the strength and identity of our close-knit community. Across the board, every single person that we engage with feels that way. So we really all feel strongly about that. And it is also worth taking a moment for our board to remind you that while we do have specific legal and ethical obligations, our board considers it a privilege to educate our students. And we want every family and child to know that they belong in Jackson, that we care about their future, and that our decisions are guided by a clear vision. No matter how hard it is to get that vision, I will just add that, so to give them the best chance to succeed in school and beyond. And because this was a question that sort of was in the ether this month, it bears reminding folks that boards exist to serve the collective will, to act in alignment with majority views while responsibly addressing minority concerns to maintain legitimacy and transparency. And that is what we are trying to do. In this process, our role is not just oversight and accountability. Our job is to ensure schools operate in a manner that reflects local values and needs and balancing interests, of which there are many, and to negotiate the best contracts possible. So our goal here in this month and as we go forward is to engage with you all and to get participation. And so we wanted to highlight that this month, thanks to the survey, letters to the paper, emails, telephone calls, in-person visits, we've had well over 100+ responses to the presentation last month and feedback and input, and it was really valuable. We had folks that have never made a comment before participate and really add important input, asking for questions, clarifications, providing support, which is much needed in these divided times. And I will not go through this whole thing again because we did it last month, but I put it up there to remind folks but this is a very complicated landscape that we are trying to navigate these days. We are not just balancing one contract and another contract. As you will see from the next presentation, we have a lot of considerations. We have budget, we have middle school, elementary school, open enrollment, all sorts of things. So these are all the things that we are spending time on. And I can tell you, because I tallied it before I came this evening, there are over 50 board hours that have gone into preparing for tonight, following up on things, putting work in. And I can't even tell you how many hours our staff are putting in as we are requesting information, asking for support and things like that. So there's a lot of work going on. And with that, I just want you to recognize it so that you give us the benefit of the doubt when we're not perfect, because we are not. So as far as the survey goes, we had 71 responses, the majority of which, about 95 plus, were from Jackson. You can see we had a lot of taxpayers. We had a nice variety of folks, and why I'm putting this bottom slide up is that I wanted to highlight for you that we had students participating, which was important to a lot of adults because they have been asking us to get participation. So we will come back to some of that, but we've got a nice variety from a cross-section from the community. And just a note, the raw information from the survey will be made available to folks. So we're trying to summarize it and to get information out to you this evening, but we will do our best to get the actual responses to folks so you can read them yourselves. So over 75% felt that they understood the options and the two contracts that we had put forward for consideration. And the majority, over 75%, felt that they supported. What we are interested in are the folks who are not sure about the information and who are not supportive of the current plan, because we can learn a lot from the people who are not understanding and who disagree. So that's where we're going to focus our energy tonight. Overall, the majority of the respondents felt confident. 86% of respondents did not ask for information. They felt pretty confident. And 14% of respondents wanted clarifications. There were folks at both ends of the spectrum who said, I will definitely vote one way, I will definitely vote the other way, I don't care what else you do. Again, those aren't necessarily the folks we're looking to engage. We want to make sure that if you have a question, if you have a concern, we at least address it, even if you don't agree with our conclusion. I had to recognize this, because it's a rare day when a politician gets up and says, you know what I'd like to do? I'd love to hear from the public. You know what? You all were really lovely. Even people who were critical of us had nice things to say. So we are very thankful for that. Okay, key takeaways. The majority of folks are confident, but clarity is critical. Top needs include clarifying understandings, providing clear recommendations, and making sure ballot language is 100% clear to everyone. That means continuing engagement. There was more data requested, and we'll talk a little bit about that because we've presented a lot of data over the last couple of years. But there are folks who are looking for the most responses we heard were from people who want more information on the power of academics, career tech at FA, and costs. And a lot of responses included asking for more student voices. Overall, there was a feeling that the choice value has empowered families. So this is where we get into trying to clarify things for people. So again, if anyone wants to jump in at any part, please do. We want to be clear that at this point, the action that the board has taken was to recommend 2 contracts for the public's consideration. They are not on warrant articles at this time. They are being debated and considered. And it will be up to the board to move them forward in the next couple of months if they are to make it onto a March annual meeting warrant article. So we want to be very clear about that because we are trying to follow a very clear and defined process, and we want to make sure that at each step there is time for input and for folks to understand what we're doing. An issue that has arisen that we want to speak to is why there are contracts at all at this point. And this might become clear for some of you a little later in the presentation, either tonight or the next one. We have a large group of folks in town who, for a variety of reasons, primarily economic, are lobbying for the idea that we should close down our school or have no contracts at all. because they are of the belief that that will save taxpayers money. And I can tell you, we have spent a lot of time looking at all the possible outcomes from different decisions. So that is something we were ready and willing to engage in. But why we put contracts forward at all is because we feel there's equitable access to opportunity when you have contracts, especially with the ones that we negotiated. This is particularly important when you think about what school boards are meant to do. Contracts allow us a legal right to continue our oversight of student education. If you don't have a contract with a school or district and a student goes to that district, we lose oversight of that student. So they give us rights, contracts. Long-term financial stability balances flexibility with security, protecting against the risks of no contract. And some of this includes predictable student numbers that might strengthen program planning and clear expectations and standards built into contracts. We also are very hopeful that these are contracts that are the basis of relationships, so they help us to grow partnerships. And one of the very key factors here that folks will want to remember is that contracts allow us guaranteed oversight of special education. You will hear this now, and you'll hear it again and again. We are legally required to pay for special education for all of our students, no matter where they go to school. Unless, well, let me say this, if they're homeschooled, they can opt out. But by and large, we are responsible to provide an adequate education, and when the student goes to another district under something like open enrollment, what we're about to talk about, we are legally required to pay for that. Why did we pursue 2 contracts? For those who have not been following, this process actually started several years ago. There have been other iterations of the board and committees, and they looked at other schools, they looked at other districts. So to some extent, we inherited 2 contracts, but we also felt very strongly that we should pursue 2 contracts because we had the opportunity to ask taxpayers, we asked for your input, and over 72% of voters told us, do this. So for us, that was a very clear mandate, and we felt like if we take our duty and we take our accountability seriously, then we have to follow that mandate. And we have to make sure that we follow it in a very clear way. Practically, it helped us negotiate way better contracts, and it helped us to negotiate fair deals, especially with time. As a final reminder, the board does not approve these contracts, you do. So our job is to negotiate them, and we bring them to you, and you get the final say. So ultimately, every single person up here, whatever our situation, we don't really know what's going to happen. We may end up with 1 contract, 2 contracts, no contracts. That is wholly up to you. We do not get a say in that. So we have had folks who have raised the topic of conflict of interest, and it is really important when people start to throw around phrases that are potentially slanderous and have a high ethical weight to go back and see, what does this actually mean? So we did that. We have a policy, and under policy BCB, a conflict of interest is a personal or pecuniary interest that is immediate, definite, demonstrable, and which is or may be in conflict with the public interest. This is something we have kept in mind throughout our entire process because we are well aware that in a small town, any one of us, whether it's a taxpayer or a board member, can benefit from any potential situation. And so it was very important to us that we were transparent, that we were very clear about where we were, what we were doing, and to make sure that every decision that we make is for the public interest. And if it's not, we expect you to hold us accountable. So, to the actual meat of the survey, the most popular topics that we got, and again, we're summarizing because there were a lot of open-ended responses, but the most touched on topics were that people were interested in apples-to-apples comparisons between Kent and Freiburg, including enrichment and extracurriculars. They also wanted simplified summaries of academics. They wanted us to revisit transportation to make sure it's clear. They wanted us to go back and explain how the special education process works under these contracts, as well as student support. There was a request for career and technical education at Freiburg, clarity around that. There were a number of folks who felt like there are no offerings. So we'll speak to that. And then, this is really important because this is going to take us into our next conversation. The broader context, there are folks who are aware of the open enrollment situation in New Hampshire and started asking about that. And we've been working on that for a while, so this is the perfect time to get to that. And lastly, a number of folks wanted to know how Conway was looking to attract students and how they have, and commented on how they've been engaging as a partner to Jackson throughout negotiations. So, we're going to try to touch on these very high level as best we can. Comparisons between Kennett High School and Freiburg Academy. We want to direct your attention to a previous presentation from October 21st of 2024. We had both Kevin Carpenter and Joe Manning here to speak about their programs and their institutions, and they both did a really fine job, way better than we did. So we want to direct folks to that presentation. It can give you great insight into comparisons between the two schools. We got wonderful feedback on their presentations. We also have made sure that their school profiles for each school are available, so everyone should have access to those. And for those who don't know, a school profile essentially gives you a high-level summary of a number of achievement and data points for each institution. So that it's something that colleges use to see where students are coming from, and it can be a pretty important document for some people. It's one piece of information. We also have the opportunity, yes, Megan, jump in.
So I have a question about this to help everyone, because yes, we had those visits, and what I'm really interested in is up-to-date renditions. And I know, Amy, we had asked for this for you with the CTE work, to understand what is being advertised versus what is being offered in person at both schools. So I think it's really important that we have that up-to-date information for career tech and for academics. So that is a request that I have that I want to bring to the SAU, because I believe we've been able, that Freiburg has presented that, and that's a missing piece of data. And it doesn't help us to look at what was there in 2024. It's important to know at the moment of these negotiations, where are we, what is being offered. This is not about the pie in the sky. This is butts and chairs, physical presence of what is being offered.
What is available, which is what people are asking us.
Yep.
Do you want to get any more specific?
So do we need to make a warrant article, or just, whoa, okay, had a long day of work, started at 4:30 this morning. A lot of things happening in Indonesia. Take two. Do we need to do a motion? Do we need to make a formal request? But I think that's critical information for our taxpayers to have.
We've got some of that in motion, so
Yeah.
let's talk for a minute and then we can decide if we want to make a motion. So to your point, Micah, and for those of you who have not been in on some of our emails this month, one of the things we are looking to do is to get a up-to-date snapshot of what the offerings are. And you'll see we were able to do it for career tech offerings. What I think Mike is referring to is, for example, like AP classes.
I understand.
Because you see something's offered, and we know that at that presentation in October of 24, certain courses are offered, but when you ask further questions, then we find out that they don't run necessarily. So they look like we have them, but we don't have them. So I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, I want to talk about AP classes, unified arts, and even core curriculum because I don't think it's just about AP classes. I think it's having a snapshot of what if the core curriculum is staffed and offered.
Okay. So would you?
Well, and I just have a question to clarify about that. I have a memory during the presentation of there being a pretty extensive portfolio of courses being presented to the community. But at that time, it wasn't clear which of those courses at Kennett were being offered as VLAX courses, and which of them there were teachers in person to offer the course. So I just want to, it sounds as though.
I agree. I think we need to have that, so we need visibility into all of that. Not just is this offered, is this fulfilled, who is fulfilling it, and what does that look like?
That's a great point. Does anyone have anything else, any other information or any other sort of highlights that you might want? So,
What do we need, Jess, to be able to move on that?
well, I think, why we make motions is for clarity for Amy and for clarity for the record. So let's make a motion so that everybody knows that that's what we're looking for.
Okay, I make a motion to have an updated comparative document that presents real-time offerings that are staffed by, that are directly staffed, not online staffed, for each school as of December 2025.
Okay, so, and that would include moving
For
forward.
Friday again.
Okay.
Yeah, and moving and looking forward, what is now and also for next semester.
So, Amy, will you manage the Kennett side? What we do is, the last time, I think we essentially said, can you tell us what, does everything run at Freiburg? If not, what's not running? And he confirmed to us, so.
And I would like to add to that, that I don't, so one of the very painful parts in my life right now, being on the school board, is how long everything takes. And to be, I don't want to have that information a month from now. We are all in real time. We don't have to wait till our next meeting. So I would like to push us to have that meeting by January 10th at the latest, because I think that is entirely possible. And I think we can even have it sooner. So that's my
I
motion.
think they actually did a pretty good job. We have a template, so they can just update that. Great, so, okay, that was great, thank you. And please interrupt, don't.
Does anyone want to second that motion?
I would like to second
Oh,
that.
sorry.
Any more discussion on that? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous, Melissa, thank you. Okay. Thank you for that. So, the other thing is, would the board want to set up, we can set up tours, we can ask, Amy to set up a tour with the high school, and we can set up a tour Freiburg for folks now that things are more real? Is that something we?
For the board or
For
for
the
general
public.
public?
Yeah, for the public.
Yeah, I think for the public, that's.
I mean, I think it was very revealing for the board to
Yes.
do that.
Mhm.
So we got very good feedback from that exercise. So why don't we go ahead and do that as well? So I'll make a motion that we set up open house tours, make them available to the public, for both institutions.
I second that.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Okay, so, well, I think we just showed you. We're gonna try to keep making information available for everyone. There were a number of questions about whether things would be available under the contracts. We just want to be very clear, under both contracts, everything would be available that each school has. So that is not an issue at all. So the next topic, and I just want to remind everyone, we're just going to go through this list here. You'll see, so we did Alice, we're going to do transportation now. So this is just a reminder of what we presented last time, and we'll just highlight a couple things. There was some feedback, folks wanted us to point out the distances, the extra time it would take to get to Freiburg. We did try to do that, that's why you can see these time, distance on the actual pictures. Other than that, daily transportation is our responsibility. Why we worked on the late bus was it allows for full participation at Freiburg Academy, should that contract go forward. Yes, James?
My understanding, and on that first bullet, is that that's not entirely the case. Can you clarify what is the responsibility of a district with respect to transporting students in high school?
Oh, so, well, we actually don't need to provide transportation.
Right.
Right.
We've
but
chosen to.
We've chosen to,
Right.
yes. And
Right.
traditionally, thank you for that clarification, yes. So by law, we have to provide transportation up to grade 8, correct, Amy?
That's correct.
So, but we do not legally have to provide grades 9 through 12. So that was a consideration our board has spent a lot of time on, because if we truly are looking to provide equitable access for folks, and if we've traditionally provided transportation, and we know there are folks who can't get to Kennett, that's how we included that. So, but that is for your consideration. Thank you, James. Providing the late bus allows full participation in all extracurricular activities and more. And why you see the and more there is because in the event a student chooses not to participate in a sport or another formal activity at Freiburg Academy, they would have the option of participating in an academic enrichment or another formal oversight piece so that they're not left unattended until they get to the bus. And one thing we've learned this month is that there is a possibility, we knew this was a possibility, but we didn't know if it was real because we didn't know if there were other districts that were considering seriously Freiburg, but we know that there are other districts seriously considering them. So that is a possibility down the line where we might be able to reduce our costs should we partner with other districts who happen to be doing it. Ooh, that was exciting. Okay. So as far as special education goes,
Everybody read that now.
okay, just take this in and just questions. No, I'm kidding. This is a document we will make available to everyone. Why this is up here is for the simple reason wanted to make it clear that regardless of the school, there are legal protections for students who get special education services. In both of our contracts, we have negotiated that the ultimate oversight and the process will remain here. It will be our Director of Special Services, our superintendent, our LEA. So essentially, what happens with the student is the same process regardless of who they go to. Now, will they maybe get a different provider if they're at a different institution? Yes. But that would be something that would be at the oversight of our team and with the input of the family. So the most I wanted to highlight for you here, I did not make this document. You should know that this comes from the Parent Information Center. And actually, I found it first on the New Hampshire School Board Association website. Parents have a lot of rights. And so one thing that I think our board is thinking about is making sure that parents understand all their rights for special education, regardless of where they go. And I think generally there's an effort to make sure that people understand that. But no matter where a student goes under both contracts, there's a referral, there is a decision-making meeting, there is evaluation, there's an eligibility determination, there's development of an IEP, there's a determination of educational placement, there's monitoring.
Can I highlight something, Jesse, you said earlier, and I think it's really important. And at this point, it's really helpful for us to all share to you that we spent months, year plus of time speaking about this in non-public to protect from a contractual way. So being able to speak with you all bluntly is really helpful at this point. And I think it's also really helpful to be quite blunt about some of these provisions. Like special ed does not go, so we're gonna talk about special ed a lot coming up. You wanna talk about our tax bill, we're gonna talk about special ed. You wanna talk about what our budget is next year, we're gonna talk about special ed. You want to talk about what happens if you close our school? We're going to talk about special ed. Because no matter what, that stays. That is not a choice that the Jackson School Board gets to make or that the Jackson Grammar School gets to make about what our costs are. This is a cost that we have legal obligation to, as we should have, to make sure that every child in our district has access to adequate education. So that's something we're going to keep coming back to, and I think it's important because there's a lot of rumblings going on right now. And if we close our school, you don't get rid of kids. So unless that's the second plan, you're still going to have obligation to pay for those kids to be educated and to have education, whatever that means, if it's special ed, or if it's or whatever the other education costs are. And I'm going to keep bringing that up for everybody to think about.
One more piece, you just reminded me. So we are in an effort to summarize information, some of it which we've been over many times, both in non-public, in meetings with SAU administrators, with Freiburg administrators. We're going to try to summarize information for you. So we're going back to people and saying, is there a way that you can put that into a different context so that we can give it out to people? So what I have in my hand and will be shared is, we did ask Freiburg, could you summarize not only the special ed process, but student support services? So that's something that will be worth taking a look at. I just got that at about 5 or 5:30. And I'll bring this back up in another meeting. We'll put it up on the screen so people can see it. But we also do want to highlight something. We worked with our administrators. We worked with our Director of Special Services, Pam Stimson, who put in like as much effort as anyone could to educate us, even then when we were asking the same question 10 different ways, and it was very frustrating for her. We did the same thing over at Freiburg. So we've been over this road many times. If it is not clear to you, you come back to us and we will try to find a way for you to understand that our board feels very comfortable that this is a service that will be provided and that it's legally provided under the contracts that we've negotiated. So, career and technical education. So, good fortune actually showed on us today because I was able to personally communicate with both Joe Grimsdale at Pennant and or the MWB CTC, and as well as Joe Manning over at Freiburg Academy. So I've really been trying to wrap my brain around what is the career tech that we're trying to understand. And so, again, much like getting the actual definition of something for other topics, we want to know what does it mean for career tech, because people throw that around, and it was thrown around a lot by Conway board members in various meetings. They're throwing it out in the newspaper. Career and technical education is distinct from sitting in a classroom with a book. in that it offers a chance for students to explore career opportunities and receive experiential and technical training that prepares students for college and careers. So that is a very basic definition of what that is. And why we're sharing that is because it can look very different depending on the situation you're in. And that's good for a lot of students because it allows that type of education to be personalized for students. So we were trying to come up with what Freiburg offered. And then it occurred to me, well, let's just make sure that we can make it clear to people, like, how could they compare? It is very difficult, as you'll see. But to highlight a few things, there are, Freiburg Academy pointed out that for students to explore careers, to explore career opportunities and to receive experiential training or technical training, they offer a variety of classes over a period of days in the month of May. They call it May term. It's a specific class, and they have dozens of offerings, from tap dancing to SAT prep to, I don't know, boating or some other things. And they offer a number of traditional career tech, skilled trade topics in that. So for example, it might be wilderness CPR. They did that winter. They also have a number of certificate programs. They mentioned they have a business, entrepreneurship, and AI course on Monday evenings. And they have an after-school enrichment program, which has a dozen to 2 dozen offerings that allow students to explore topics over 16-week periods, both in the spring and the fall semesters. I won't go through every item, but the point of this is to point out that there's availability for these topics, for these interests at both campuses. We also have a good authority from our attorney that our students would have access to the Career Tech Center at Kennet in the event that they go to Freiburg. And Freiburg has told us they would work with our students. If there's a student who wants to attend a career tech class at Kennet and they can work that out, they will do that. So,
Jess, can you pause and can we double click on that? That's on good advice from our attorney because of our legal rights with Kennet being what? So
it's a regional career tech center, and as a member of the SAU, because they're residents, it's based on the residency of your town, not on the school that you attend.
thank you.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarity though, that would require Conway to engage in a regional agreement with Jackson,
Okay.
which it currently does not have.
Okay.
So Conway would need to be willing to establish a regional agreement. Even though the Career Tech Center is considered regional, it requires agreements with each of the towns that participate should they not have a tuition contract.
So I think that would actually be a point we can pursue. We have a definitive statement saying we can fight that against and say we have access to it. So
I have a follow-up question on
Yeah.
that. What towns does Conway have a regional agreement with?
They don't.
So what we were told was that because it's a regional center, whether there's an agreement or not, it would be frowned upon by the Department of Education for them to exclude a student, given some recent things. So this is an important topic, and if people want to pursue it more, we can, but otherwise it would be worth, I think, moving on.
Great.
That's right. Yeah.
But before we move on though, as somebody who came to this community 15 years ago, I had heard over and over again about how great the Career and Technical Center at Kennet is. We've certainly heard that more recently from our colleagues on the Conway School Board. I know Joe Riddenzale, and I was really sad to see that he's no longer going to be the director. And I think I have the memory that now this is the second director that the Career and Technical Center will have had in the last 2 or 3 years. And so I'm just curious about the leadership there and the long-term plan and how that leadership change is going to affect the offerings.
Do you want to discuss that at a later meeting, or do you want that answered now?
Well, no, I don't expect anybody can answer that now, but I think that that's something that the community may have some questions about, and so it may be helpful if the SAU can update us on some information so that we can share it with the community.
Okay. All right, so just a couple more highlights here. So something to point out for Kennet is they have a high level of very formal skilled trades programs. You can see that there. Teacher ed, criminal justice, bike tech, culinary. Those I could not find the match over at Freiburg other than through internships, co-ops. They have some classes you can take that you can personalize. So, you know, the point here is please engage with this. Tonight, we'll make sure that it's available. For those who think there are no offerings, please ask the questions. Look, go to their website, ask us questions, because if you spend the time, you'll see that it's just challenging to say one thing is not present, right? I mean, they have an entire certificate of arts program. To the point you made before, Mike, I learned today they don't actually offer the healthcare pathways program even though it's on the CTE website at Kennet. So, I mean, that's a staffing issue. I think the intention is to offer it, they just aren't able to do it. So, okay. Another very, very important topic, and we'll talk about this tonight, we will keep coming back to it. There was a request for clarity on warrant articles and voting. So, we have presented 2 potential contracts to you all. We are hoping for input, things like that. We're looking to finalize these contracts. And then we will, hopefully, if things go forward, present both of them on separate warrant articles to the town. So that when folks show up here on annual meeting day, they will have the option to vote for one. They will have an option to vote for the other. Voting for one does not mean you can't vote for the other. So the town is able to approve both. One is not dependent on the other. Is that making sense? Does anyone want to clarify that, just in case I'm not saying it correctly?
You have 2 votes. You can vote for both contracts that you want to accept them, so that you will then have 2 contracts for parents to choose from. It's not an either-or thing.
Right. So we'll say, will the town approve a contract with Freiburg? Will the town approve a contract with Conway? And it will be approved or not by majority vote on that evening.
But it would be really nice to get people's help with this, because it feels like it's going to be confusing.
So,
I'm gonna come back to this at the end of this. Part of that, I wanna talk a little bit about this flyer and a mailer that we wanna do to make, and maybe 2 mailers, so that we have something going out now, and we have something going out right before the vote to help people, and that we're also educating people the night of. And anybody who comes to our school board meetings, you're an official ambassador helping people, helping to explain this, so that the work that you're doing hanging out with us on these evenings is now like paying it forward and helping people understand what that vote is and helping spread the correct information, because this is pretty nuanced and it's a new thing for us to all go through. And at the end of the day, as we all know, it depends who walks through that door on March 6th and who decides to vote and how they understand that process. March 5th. Okay, but March 6th, don't come. It's March 5th.
March 5th, okay. So it actually, let's give Emily a birthday present, and I'll show up. So there are 4 possible outcomes here, right? Voters can approve only a Freiburg contract, only a Kennet contract, both, or neither one of them. And just a quick comment on that, should a contract not get approved, that doesn't mean it's necessarily over. The board at that point still has the obligation to provide an education. And we would most certainly, especially if both got rejected, but more than likely, we would go back and we would say, let's find out why that got rejected. And we would do our best to renegotiate, because our job is to get the best we can for our students. So it would be, the ball would be back in our court. It would not be over. It's not, we're stuck together. Okay, another question we had was about the Department of Education approval process. And if you remember, we pointed out that this is not just about us making a decision and you making a decision. Ultimately, this must get approved by the Department of Education. How that works is once we have contracts that are approved, we send them to the Department of Education for review. They're looking for very specific things. And so they will put it onto a public agenda. They'll review it for legality, fairness, standards. We can get into more detail about that, but that's the essential highlights. And then they will either vote to approve it, reject it, or send us requests for modifications. Practically speaking, one of the things we're spending a lot of time on is making sure that the Board of Education knows what we're doing. So way back when, some of you might remember that there was a question about whether we could drive past Kennet to send students to Freiburg if we were to even look at that option. And that, I think, was when the High School Options Committee was operating. We went right to the Department of Education to ask that question, because we do not want to get to a point where we put in all this effort and then it doesn't get approved. So we're doing our best to update the Board of Education regularly. I just personally met with the commissioner a week or so ago, as well as with our attorney. So we are hoping it will be a formality. If it's not, it means that something has surprised us. Moving forward, you will see this probably more than once. We want to remind folks, please educate yourself. We're about to go into another presentation. We're going to jump up and grab a Hershey Kiss or something, but this isn't even the most complicated thing that we're going to talk about tonight. If you need to get registered to vote, there are rules around that. Please get registered. Yes?
So we're checking on the voter registration, which is, I seem to recall, after years ago, the preschool vote, that there was some level of a mandate made that the school board could ask for a special supervisor of the checklist meeting. Have we vetted that? Nicole, I know
Well,
you
Nicole
worked.
has been, I want to just highlight that each board member have taken on different tasks to move things forward. Nicole has gone through a number of emails back and forth, so do
Yeah.
you want to give us our current status?
I just want to know if I know there's the standard supervisor of the checklist, and we don't yet know the date that's closest to the school board meeting, correct?
Correct. The latest I had from the supervisors of the checklist was there's a new law that requires them to conduct a review of the checklist every 90 days.
But not on the 90th day.
Roughly, they plan to have, there should be one January, February timeframe, and then another one in March, like leading up to the elections, but they haven't been able to provide me the actual dates yet because they were still waiting for the calendar from the state, is what they said, so.
And then I would love, because I remember this from that vote, that there was a question about whether or not we could ask for an additional because of a school vote. So I would love to make sure that we're vetting that, because if I had just moved to town and I had many things to do, and I was hearing that I had to make sure that I was registered to vote, and the supervisor of the checklist checked me out, but they could do it possibly at some point in January, possibly some point in March, my interest and capacity to vote would be rapidly declining. And I feel like that's a general disenfranchisement that we're doing on voting, which I think is really unfortunate. And I know we are all committed to making sure everybody who lives in Jackson has the right to come and vote on this.
So I do want to clarify that you can register to vote at any time at the town
Yes.
office.
But most
But
people,
you're not-
I live in Minnesota, you could register to vote the day you voted, right?
Yeah.
So it is a very specific piece of the puzzle that you have to
I think
register
it's
to
10
vote.
days before, so we'll.
So I want to help, I want to look at whether or not we can request, because I know that when we do town votes, you can register and the supervisor of the checklist is at that meeting, or is at that vote. So you can register and vote.
So
and
we'll
I-
double check that. and
It's
we'll
really
get back to
important
January.
that we're very.
I got that on
So
my to-do
Amy,
list.
can we put that on our agenda for
I
January?
was just looking, I thought we clarified that last year, but I can take a peek.
It's still important to come back to it because we are in a hot button time.
I just meant I couldn't make you the answer.
One more thing about that, I just want to give a moment of thank you to Karen Burton over at the town, who's already reached out to us to help make sure that elections go smoothly
Yes.
for all the elections, but she basically offered support and said, as far as, if you have a big vote coming up, what do we need to do? So we are working on that, and
It would also be great to understand how counting happens if we are going to a ballot vote versus a yea or nay.
yeah, and that's one of the things we talked about, because there are now options for like an electronic vote, or do we
Yeah.
hand count them? Do we want the full drama of us standing here while everyone waits? Or do we go with like popping, so
Yeah.
we'll come back to you on all that too. That's in the works, already processed. As always, there will be a public comment period, of course. Come to meetings. If anyone is interested, you're welcome to always reach out to me, telephone, email. I know fellow board members receive a lot of feedback and input as well. You're always welcome to contact Amy, reach out to her. We welcome that. This is the time. If you know of people who have concerns or questions but are shy or nervous about it, please help them find a way, because we can't engage if we don't know about it. And this is the time. We don't want it to be in March when it's happening and it becomes a panic situation for folks. We have the time now, and it's one of the reasons we push so hard to be able to speak freely. Okay.
Guys, sorry Jess, this is my role tonight. Hey, so two things. One, I want to make sure that we have this mailer go out, and I want to understand if we have the budget to be able to print up a color mailer and posters to put around town, and who I need to talk to about that. so that we can make sure that this is done. So we would need to be able to print this and be able to create it put it in an envelope and send it out to the post office to all the residents of Jackson, and I'm hoping that I've done that correct. And so Amy, is that something we talked to you about? Erin, where does that live in the budget?
Sometimes it's a printing line.
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
printing line, I don't know.
Okay, and do we have a mailing line? I don't wanna have a plan for this and then find out we can't do it, or then we're gonna have a bake sale because this is gonna happen. Okay,
I'll find out.
okay, so,
Let's just talk about when is the tentative date? We
so I wanna
to
do, I think what we're looking at, and, you know, when y'all get to do your citizen comments, you can weigh in on this. I think we need to have posters up now, and so we need to have a couple 11 by 17 posters that are very simple. And then I think we should do 2 mailings. We should do one now, so people know what's coming, and then we have a reminder that happens 10 days beforehand. And I have no idea, we do have the poster, but, you know, I have no idea how many people live in Jackson that we could mail to. Is it 700 homes? Who knows? Something along these lines. I can work to get an estimate of how many actual pieces of mail we need to send, but we need to make sure that we're not getting shut down at the 11th hour because we don't have a budget for it.
Sounds good, so maybe can you work to follow up with it?
Yep.
Erin? Okay.
Sounds good.
And just 2 more quick things. Oh,
So
yeah,
$100 in your printing line.
Okay.
We can transfer money.
Okay, that is not enough, yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, are you talking about to get people to register to
No,
vote?
to-
Or to understand?
It's a
the budget?
one-pager that is understanding what's coming for high school contracts, which also has, here's how you register to vote. It's helping, our whole goal is making sure that everybody who gets to make this decision have the information.
So you want all residents, not just registered voters?
All residents, yes.
good question.
Yep, thanks, Pam. Yep.
Okay, so we'll follow up on that as well. Just 2 more quick things. One is, I just remembered, there was a comment from someone about, you know, contract lengths should be the same. Because of when the Conway contract was negotiated at the very last moment, I mean, it was negotiated a long period of time, the deal was struck late, they had asked for the amount of time. So at that point, we just wanted to agree to whatever we could. So I think that's a topic that we certainly can think about, but I want to just acknowledge that we heard that comment in the feedback, and it's not unnoticed. So, and lastly, this whole presentation is our best effort to respond to the biggest things. Right now, we've got. We will continue to do so. If we miss something, please let us know. If you have feedback, again, let us know. But we also want to be sensitive to the fact that we have other information to share tonight and to discuss. So with that, shall we turn to the next item?
Yep, it's Bartlett.
Okay, so, yeah, so we have just a quick update on the high school contracts. We are waiting for Conway to give us back a draft of the contract. Freiberg, I think, sent us something, our attorney had it and just sent that back to us. We haven't had a chance to fully review that, but it's essentially in the final stages. So the goal would be to get those out for the public to view them as soon as we can. We haven't seen comments at all since the final verbal agreement that was made a month or so ago. As far as the Bartlett Middle School contract goes, we are working to come to terms for a negotiated agreement there. The ball is in their court. We are waiting to hear back from them. So we're in a bit of a holding pattern this month. There's not much we can do to move things forward, but I'm confident we'll have information on things in January. So.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, I recall that you and the negotiating team from Conway reached an agreement on the terms,
Right.
and that was 5 or 6 weeks ago, right?
Yes.
And so,
Just about 5 weeks.
okay. And are you saying that since then, despite all of the stuff that patients are telling me is going on in the media, that you haven't gotten a draft of a contract?
No, we actually drafted one, sent that to them. We prompted them. We have not gotten something back.
What do you make of that?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's not an answerable question. Okay, thank you.
I have my 3 a.m. wonderings, but I don't think they're ready to be shared at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
What I can tell you is we're eager to get those to the board for review, and we're doing what we can.
Sure.
Both with Conway as well, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
tell you, she's probably sick of getting my emails. I'm like, hey, any news on that? You know, so. All right, next.
Thanks.
We're going to open enrollment. Erin, can we swap?
Yeah. I think I left it.
Everybody stretch. You need me to throw you like Hershey kiss? How are we doing, you know?
I didn't want to change outfits so people don't,
Come get them.
sit here being.
All right. Oh, but that's new.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Cool. All right. So, just in case high school contracts weren't exciting enough for this year, we also have the very real situation happening that open enrollment is upon us in New Hampshire. It has been for some time, but it's been even more apparent that it is impacting our schools. So I am going to do something very vulnerable with our board and with you all, which is share a poor first draft. And if anyone knows the actual Brene Brown, there's a different word that's oftentimes used, but this is a work in progress, okay? This is not something that is a fully baked presentation, because this is called the real work of our board, how we talk about this together. And what I realize is that there's a lot of information out there about open enrollment, and there are a lot of people saying things. There's lots of webinars that we've been going to. There's a lot of gossip, there's a lot of reality, there's a lot of apprehension. There are people wanting to just put their head in the sand and pretend it's going to go away. The reality is we as a board need to be very clear with what we know and what we don't know. So this is an attempt to get us all on the same page. And Michael helped with finances, and Jess has helped, and Amy has helped to try to say, what do we know, what do we not know, how can we be best informed? And I see this as a work in progress that we can continue to update as we get more information. So, as we go forward, hi Jess.
All right, so, the number one question I've gotten whenever I mention the open enrollment phrase is, what is open enrollment, right? It's something that's been on our mind for months, but for most folks, it is not even a topic yet. But our board, both our policy committee who met this week, and then Mike has separately been working with me to kind of push a discussion of this. We think we need to be educated about it. People need to understand what it is. It is both an opportunity and a threat, so it's really important to understand it. So open enrollment simply means, it's a law that means that a public school chooses to accept students from outside its own attendance area or district. And basically it allows a district to accept students from outside of its district, and that's simply it. So, for example, Jackson could say, as a board, as a district, we welcome students from other districts to our school. We run one school, so to Jackson Grammar School. We are opening our enrollment outside of our geographical population. So, seems fairly straightforward. It's actually been a law for quite a while, but most districts have ignored it, have not paid attention to it, because it seems a little bit confusing how it might play out, and you'll see it's actually can be very complicated. So, a very important piece here is that it allows students to go to a school outside their district without the district saying much about it, unless they become an open enrollment district themselves. So, you're going to see a lot of words here, and they actually matter. Because what's happened is we've had this law in the books for a while, no one's been paying a lot of attention, and then suddenly, this July, there's a law that comes out that says every single school district has to establish a specific line item that makes way for paying for a student's tuition in the event that they decide to leave your district and go elsewhere. So that's the basic sum of that law. So in our budget, we have to have a line item that says, this is how much we're putting towards that, okay? We cannot bury or ignore these expenses. We have to plan for them openly, and what's very important here, and will come up again, is that tuition is based on 80% of the sending district's cost per pupil. We'll get into that more. In October, you saw us raise the issue to say, hey, can we just talk about this Pittsfield case real quick? Because this was very important. This is literally the ground changing under our feet month by month. The Supreme Court ruled that when a student leaves their home district to attend an open enrollment school elsewhere, the home district, the sending district, must pay that tuition to the receiving district, even if the home district is not an open enrollment district. So what a lot of districts were doing, were saying, we're not playing that game. We're not in open enrollment. We're not going to pay for students who leave, and we're not going to accept anyone. We're just not getting involved. And what the Supreme Court said is, guess what? You have to pay anyway. If a parent takes their kid out of your district and sends them to another school, you're paying 80% of your cost per pupil. Everyone with me so far? Okay. Woo-hoo. All right, so why does this matter and how does it work? You saw us talk before about how important it was that we as a board maintain oversight of students and making sure they get an adequate education. It's sort of a core function of what a school board does. Open enrollment shifts this oversight from the district to the parent. And whatever your opinion about that, it has very practical implications for our county. Once a parent chooses to send their child elsewhere, we lose oversight and we pay that 80% of our per pupil cost. So we still pay tuition even though we no longer direct a student's education. The district is still responsible, as Micah pointed out early and will point out often, the district is still responsible for special education costs. So this presents our board, and this is something we've been struggling with for months. It presents all of our districts, all of our boards with a strategic challenge. How do you retain students, budget for tuition, and respond to changes, especially while you're negotiating tuition contracts? And what are tuition contracts, what role do they play in all of this, right? So, we have long been talking about how do we develop the most attractive programs we can do, how do we improve our facilities and services, how do we negotiate tuition contracts fairly with our surrounding towns so that we have predictability, and how do we monitor these things. So, a couple of questions to help us get a fine point on this. Are all New Hampshire public schools required to receive students under open enrollment? Today, December 15, 2025, no. But there are bills out there that are before the legislature that are going to be decided that may make it so that the answer becomes yes. But as of today, if you do not become a formal open enrollment district by warrant article, so what that means is the voters make that decision. If you don't do that today, you're not an open enrollment district. Can we stop students from attending an open enrollment school? This is where it starts to get tricky. You think, I'm not playing the game. I took my ball, I'm keeping my kids, I'm not sending them, I don't have to pay. Pittsfield says, no, you still have to pay. However, under the law today, if our district, our town, if our board approves a warrant article, the law says we can limit the number of students who leave our district under open enrollment. We also have the ability to set standards for accepting students. So it is very complicated. So we can set a cap and we can set a limit on how many transfer out.
But only if we have passed a warrant article that we are an open enrollment school. So if you haven't done that, you don't get to have any limits. But no matter what, and I'm going to pressure this, like no matter what, we had talked to Amy in a meeting a while ago and I said, so does a student from Wolfboro, if they want to tomorrow, can they come here? And technically, yes. Right? Could we?
Well, and the reason for that is because we have a tuition policy. But they're not coming here under open enrollment.
But if we vote to receive children, and one of the real reasons that we're looking at this is, and we're going to go through this in the slides, is we have decreasing enrollment in our school. How do we solve for that? How do we keep our school healthy? How do we attract more students? Well, in some ways, the state has given us an opportunity for us to use open enrollment to do that. Do we want to recommend that as a board? It's very complicated. It is not cut and dry, which is why we are doing this presentation so that we can all understand what the factors are.
Okay. Why this matters in terms of the budget discussions we're having, in terms of contracts, in terms of everything, is that currently, today, a district pays 80% of their cost per pupil that's based on the DOE 25, which is a formula table we can direct you to, but what you should know is that it's basically $42,000
For Jackson.
For Jackson.
Specifically, this.
for Jackson today. We have it on good authority that next year it will likely be going up another several $1,000s. So that is how it's currently funded. It is highly dependent on the number of students. A student who opts for open enrollment is not guaranteed transportation. But we are still responsible for special education. Yes, Melinda?
So that figure, 42,000, is what we, 80% of the 42,000 is what we would pay if we send children to other schools. The money we would receive from a sending town is based on their pure per pupil cost and would be much less. So,
Or more, depending, I mean,
Yeah,
yes, I mean, ostensibly.
yes.
Typically less.
right, if you look at the other schools surrounding us and what their
Yeah.
per pupil costs are,
Yeah.
I don't know them off the top of my head, but I just don't want people to think we're gonna get 80% of 42.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're actually a bit of a unicorn in that we have a very high per pupil cost, so we would be attractive to other districts to lure our students away, right? We are in a position where we.
Also, our low ratios are attractive to bring students to us,
To us, exactly.
which would then lower our per pupil costs. So it's a wild system.
Yeah, and the DOE 25 changes each year.
Miss Melissa, your face pretty much sums up the whole situation. It's all kinds of crazy.
Okay. All right, so to continue.
Yeah.
So, could the Jackson Grammar School become an open enrollment school, or could Jackson as a district become open enrollment via a warrant article? And we want to highlight that there needs to be clarity in policies, but this would have to be via warrant article. So yes, that's one of the few things we're very clear on, right? Can Jackson limit sending and receiving kids via open enrollment? To be clear, yes. Only if open enrollment is passed. Open enrollment districts, with your warrant, can limit how many students the town can receive at a school and how many can leave.
So right now, if a student showed up tomorrow morning and said, I want to use open enrollment because I'm legally entitled to it and I want to use it to go to school in Littleton, what would happen? We'd have to pay.
If
For
there's an
instance.
open enrollment school here.
If they had voted to receive.
Yeah.
So if Littleton had voted to receive students and a Jackson student wanted to go, we would be paying 80% of our amount for that kid to go to that school and whatever special ed cost they have. So I just want to be really clear about that. We don't get to vote about that.
And for each loss, the per pupil cost would go up for our school, so that number would go up for
Correct.
future years.
In future years. Yeah.
It would look for elementary students. Yeah.
Mike, can I
Yeah,
add
please.
something just to clarify? We don't get to vote about that unless we have a warrant
Exactly.
article where we set a cap
Yeah.
on how many students
Yeah.
we can afford to send out.
Yeah.
Is that
So
right?
we are effectively exposed to that already. I think it's really important for us to know that right now, tomorrow, that can happen. And we would need to fulfill that.
Yeah.
So how that changes is if we have, it's like you gotta pay to play, right? That's what the state has done. If you have a warrant article, then you're allowed to set provisions on that. But if you don't have a warrant article, at any point, families in your district can say, boom, we're gonna go head over to Rye, we're gonna go to Littleton, we're gonna go to Gorham, we're gonna use this to go to Kennett Middle School, you name it. It's available.
And it's the number one reason we felt like we had to bring this to the board, so we could discuss this, and also to the public, because this isn't something we need to prepare for. This is here. It's been here, and the laws are changing daily. Something to be very clear about is that there are a number of laws that are in motion that may affect it. So we're taking a snapshot for today. Things might change by January.
And the purple text is, hey, we're still monitoring this, right? But these things can change. So that's why this is really a work in progress.
Yes.
Okay.
So what does it cost if Jackson students attend other open enrollment schools? So it's calculated by the state. Because we contract out 7 through 12, it's based on our elementary school DOE number, which, as we said, is 42 currently, and it's raising to 50 next year. And for those of you who are alarmed about taxes and about finances, no one is more alarmed than our board. It is causing so much consternation and stress because, and I think our staff shares the same concerns. It is something that we are talking about nonstop because, as we said before with the high school follow-up, there are a number of competing priorities and we need to, we're trying to be wise. So, something to consider here to really make this hit home and why this was something that was on our minds during negotiations. So open enrollment is a statutory program, right? It's a law that uniform rules that apply to all of the designated open enrollment schools. If you have a contract with a school, then a student doesn't need to use open enrollment to go to that school. So it's one way that you maintain a bit of control over not only the finances, but things like expectations, transportation, special education, and anything else that governs that relationship. So, we just picked one bill that's in motion, but there are a number of them. This just is a bill that basically commissions a study on public school open enrollment, because there are a number of people, not only administrators. I think Amy, I'm sure that's your real hair, but I sort of imagine you sometimes with all your hair just popping out every time we talk about this. And she was like, do not talk about this. We cannot get this to, like, do not make a decision yet because it's so up in the air. There's a commission they're looking at creating, which, why that's important is that it would suspend all of the open enrollment rules as we know them. So, for example, if the board decided to go forward with a warrant article, that might suspend everything that we plan for. Anyway, right, so there's a lot of uncertainty, it's a very scary time.
However, if we don't plan for a warrant article doesn't appear.
That's
So
correct.
the stance that we've taken is to be, that I recommend that our board takes is that we are prepared for this. Because there's no way, and what we don't want to do is be behind this, especially when you think about all the budget considerations that we're working with. And the bottom line being that what we want to do is we want to have a thriving Jackson Grammar School, and we want to support our kids with the best education that they can have for their entire educational journey. So how do we do that as a board? In part, we think that if this is a tool that is there, whether or not we agree with whether it should be there, whether or not we think it'd be best if it didn't exist in New Hampshire, it's a tool, and we owe it to be financially responsible to bring it to the board and bring it to the town.
And just to point out, the policy committee, you'll see actually minutes in our packet, that's something that's been very heavy on our minds. We spent quite a bit of time, I think, separately, but a number of us went to a open enrollment webinar just a week or so ago that was put on by the New Hampshire School Board Association. The policy committee is very much in favor of, like, we need to speak to this as a board. We need to have a decision that's made one way or another, because we're effectively playing a game we didn't create, but acting or not acting have serious implications for our taxpayers and our students.
All right, so how could it help Jackson thrive financially? Michael, I'm gonna need some help from you. All right, so Michael, do you want to give yourself, why are we calling you Michael?
Sorry?
You want to introduce yourself as to why we bring you in for financial science?
Sure. Michael Cortez, Jackson resident, and apparently our board's FP&A analyst. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So what we did was, first off, just went through all of, so let's back up. We talked about DOE 25. DOE 25 is basically a big spreadsheet that every district has to fill out, and Mike Wade can probably talk about it better than I. That's basically all your expenditures over the past year. And it's broken down into a bunch of different sections: elementary, middle school, high school, support services versus teaching, et cetera. And so we went through all of the DOE 25s for the past 15 or so years, between 2009 and 2024. 2023, 2024, and we took out all of the elementary expenditures, aka more or less what is JGS cost. And then we took the BLS, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, inflation numbers, and we inflation adjusted all of it, just to see what is the JGS budget inflation adjusted over 15 years. And what you'll find, which is the green line, and you can see the percentages on the left, is over the last 15 years, 23, 24, because that's the latest they have, The JGS budget's been relatively flat, adjusted for inflation. Sometimes it's a little bit lower. You'll see in like the 2014, 2016 range, and sometimes a little higher, like in 2019, 2020. I think in 2023, 2024 is about 7% higher than it was in 2009, inflation adjusted. So, more or less flat over the past 15 years. What's interesting, sorry, one more second there. What's interesting though is the purple line shows you enrollment over those periods. And you'll see, unfortunately the state only goes back to 2015, so I don't have before then. But from the state, we had 37 kids in 2015, upwards of 50 in 2020, and then back down to 38 in 23-24. And what you'll notice, there's not really a huge correlation between the number of students you have and changes in budget. And that kind of makes sense if you think about it, practically speaking, like picking a teacher, Miss Groves. Miss Groves has 4 kids or 6 kids. You still got to pay Miss Groves. You still got to pay Miss Messer, etc. Right? And what you're really talking about is like materials, do that. So that's why that's flat, despite changes in enrollment. So if your budget's always the same, regardless of how many kids you have, in years of high enrollment, you're going to have a low per pupil cost, right? Or cost per pupil. In years of low enrollment, you're going to have a high per pupil cost because the school still costs the same amount, more or less, and we kind of budget or model that, whether you have 28 kids or 48 kids. So, make sense to everyone? Cool. So, open enrollment is quite interesting because it allows JGS to potentially add students and defray some of those fixed JGS costs that they're going to be pretty much the same whether we have 28 kids or 48 kids. Out-of-district students who will be paying 80% of their out-of-district, or I'm sorry, of their per pupil cost, right? So if I have, I guess let's go to the next slide. So if you kind of think through some scenarios, today I believe we have 28 students, and so if we had 5 additional open enrollment students, that would allow Jackson or JGS to probably recognize about $161,000 in savings. If you go to 10 students, it would allow you to save roughly $254,000. And then if we go back to kind of our historical enrollment of 38 students versus 28, and we added 16 additional open enrollment students, you'd probably see the savings of about $300,000 a year, about a 17% reduction in the amount that, actually it shouldn't say JGS budget reduction, that's unfair, it should say the impact on taxpayers. The JGS budget is the top line number there, if you look on the graph on the right. So I do want to just call out, and I would definitely need help from Mike Wade and Aaron here on this. I tried my best looking at the 23-24 budget to figure out what is the variable cost per student. I basically went through every single line item on that budget as best as I could and said, okay, if it's, a teacher's salary, that's fixed, right? Ms. Groves' salary, I'm speaking on her, whether we have 4 kids or 6 kids. But if it's like art material, or 10. But if it's art materials, I made that a variable cost, right? If we have 4 kids versus 6 kids versus 10 kids, the art materials will increase linearly. And that came out to about $3,700, give or take. So that's why you see that slight increase.
And I also want to share that what we did, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we did here is we aggregated a blended enrollment from SAU 9, 13, and 20. So instead of coming in and saying, these are the costs, if Bartlett came or if Conway came, we specifically tried to give an aggregate so that it wasn't picking on saying, here are the kids, here's what we can get from Bartlett. Because that's not what this is about. It's to say, here's a scenario. And I think the other thing for people to understand is that I am approached weekly with families in the district who want to send their kids to Jackson. So this is not a hypothetical, this is a real situation that we have. And this is a real situation where families are saying, we want to use open enrollment, how do we do it, how do we get to come to Jackson? So it is a real financial opportunity that Jackson has, and I think that, but again, it's not cut and dry. It's not a slam dunk, and it's not necessary, it's complicated. And it also exposes us. If we become an open enrollment school, one of the things we did here is we did a hold, so we wouldn't cap out our school and not have space if new families move to Jackson. What if we maxed out your school? So that's something you can do if you become an open enrollment school, you can set a policy and you can limit how many kids you receive and how many kids you send. So you could have a holding tank for, in an ideal world, wouldn't it be amazing if Jackson Grammar School was at full capacity, right? And wouldn't it be amazing if we could do that, but make sure that we held space for families that came here? So again, there's a lot of modeling that goes into this, but what it does in general is say there are financial gains that we can have for our budget and for our taxpayers if we start using open enrollment.
Yeah, I guess just to finish on that last slide, to be super clear. If you look at the graphs on the right, it's a little small. The bottom says 1.3 million, the top I think says 1.9. The dark blue would be the amount that Jackson taxpayers would be accountable for. So you'll see how that drops as we increase open enrollment students. So if you, again, we talked about that savings. 25 Jackson students plus 13 open enrolled would be a little of 1.45 million with a cost of around 1.75 give or take. And you can see that I don't know what color that is, greenish color? That's what the other districts would be paying in as part of open enrollment, something like that.
So it's, and obviously if we have a lot of students, it has a really big impact, but even just with a few students, it has an impact. And I want to again reiterate, that's something that we're actually right now in the process for, where we have families who would want to be sending kids here. So what happens if families?
Can I just,
Yeah.
I just want to highlight the impact will vary, just because we've said this, but just to really make that come, the impact varies depending on where they come from.
Yeah.
And then we also just have to be very careful to consider what adding students means in terms of the sort of the environment that we've got, right? So just.
And that's, we'll talk about that as we go. Yeah. Okay, so why families will choose JGS and why more families will choose Jackson Grammar School open enrollment. So Michael, do you want to talk about the table on the left and I'll do the right?
Sure. So on the left, so the state, what is that, or I mean, what is that test officially called that the DOE has every district take?
New Hampshire SAS?
The New Hampshire SAS. Correct. So basically, there's a statewide test, New Hampshire SAS, that every student in grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, I think. Am I right? Awesome. Has to take. And when they kind of collate all those results, there's basically 4 different levels that each student can kind of be put into. Either above proficient, proficient, slightly below proficient, or really below proficient. That's not the right name, sorry, but it's the gist. So if you're, so basically what you're seeing here are the students proficient by subject, aka they were either proficient or above proficient. And so in Jackson, this last year we actually did really well. 73% of all students were either proficient or above proficient in math. And in reading, 86% of Jackson students were proficient or above proficient in math. Or sorry, in reading, sorry. And so below you'll see that Jackson is actually number 3 in the entire state for reading, which is awesome, and number 13 in math in the state, which is pretty cool. So.
And there's a really big article in the paper that came out this fall about this, and that is, that's part of the milieu of families saying, hey, wait a second, there's this open enrollment thing. Jackson's doing something really good. How can we get our kids to go to Jackson? And some of the other things that they pick up are these pieces, right? We have these small class ratios, which would go away because of what our caps are. We have dedicated math instruction. We have great unified arts. We have an after-school program, school sports, our whole child focus, how we interact with our community, and our location. So, there are other reasons why Jackson is appealing, but we wanted to put this up to talk about what it is that is, like, why people would choose us. Okay, so what happens if Jackson students?
Mike,
Yeah.
before you move on,
Yeah.
this is a fantastic presentation. I'm really impressed, and I want to piggyback on this. In case the presentation isn't persuasive enough to everybody in the audience like it is to me, it might be interesting to know that the state of Ohio has had open enrollment for the last 20 years. The effects of open enrollment have been studied by a group of researchers, and what they've found is exactly what Micah and Michael are presenting to this group, that the schools that saw the biggest influx from 20 years worth of open enrollment data in the state of Ohio were schools with the characteristics that JGS has.
James, can you repeat that last sentence, please?
So the data from the state of Ohio showed that the schools that attracted the most students in open enrollment were the schools that were the most similar to JGS. Smaller schools, schools that had higher academic marks, and were desirable to people from around the communities for other reasons. So I don't think that this is speculative. I think that this has really been borne out by 20 years of data in other places that have had a system like this in place for far longer than the state of New Hampshire.
I've also looked up studies from Wisconsin, which has had open enrollment, and it tracks with what James was saying about Ohio, about there being definite winners and losers as far as open enrollment goes. So it could really help some school districts and really hurt others, which is why it's such a touchy subject, and why most schools haven't really touched it or adopted it yet, because it is pretty volatile.
Thanks. So I was going to talk a little bit about what happens if Jackson students go somewhere else. So,
Sure. So I think we already kind of hammered this one a little bit, and sorry the text is so small. Any student that leaves via open enrollment from Jackson will cost Jackson taxpayers roughly $34,000. That's 80% of the cost per pupil, right? $42,000. 80% of $42,000 is $34,000. However, I think what we have to also keep in mind that while we have to pay that $34,000, we no longer have to pay to educate that student either in Jackson or with one of the contracts that we currently have at Bartlett or at Kent, right? And so if we kind of look at that, we just talked about how JGS is a relatively fixed cost. Ms. Grove's salary is Ms. Grove's salary. She's in that one. So again, my analysis roughly, each student costs, each incremental student that we add to JGS costs roughly $3,700. So we wouldn't have to pay that. But as we look at the tuition contracts, and again, these numbers might not be perfect, but they're pretty darn close. We wouldn't have to pay the $33,000 per year we roughly pay to Bartlett today. Or I was trying to keep everything in 23, 24 numbers, roughly 26.5 for a high school student. So net, each student that leaves via open enrollment, Jackson would have to pay, again, net, about $30,000 if it's K through 6, about $900 for
on top of the contract.
On top of the contract, yeah. $900 for a 7-8, and then about $6,000 for a 9 through 12. But again, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. Costs will escalate most likely in our variable based on our cost per pupil. We just talked about how we see was it 50K for the future cost per pupil. So that'll raise those numbers again.
Can you just touch on transportation's role and costs in this?
So transportation is not included in open enrollment. So that's family responsibility.
Yeah.
Special ed stays with the sending district, transportation is not part of open enrollment.
And I assumed transportation and this was a fixed cost because we still need to run the bus, whether it's 1 kid or 10 kids or whatever. So.
Not to complicate things more, can I ask a question about how special ed translates in this scenario? So if a family says, I'm going to Littleton, and they have an IEP, and is the Jackson School District's responsibility to pay for that student's special education costs, is the SAU going to hire a teacher that's willing to work in Littleton? Or does Littleton hire those needs and then bill us? Like, do we know how much we have, or you have, or you know what I mean? Like,
What we're seeing is essentially we are sending a check and they are sorting it out, but we lose the oversight of what that would look like. And we don't necessarily have a say or set that up anymore. It would be, they go, they do their thing. There are certainly some conversations that are happening around that topic, but that is the law today.
okay.
We are responsible for special education regardless.
But we don't decide how those costs are determined when they're outside our district. Right, we don't have oversight into that.
Now, one thing I did notice, I was looking at today, is that there are certain fixed costs for services for special ed in New Hampshire. So I think that's something we need to keep talking about if and how we progress with this, because it may or may not be a wash, I don't know, so.
So I want to come back to this, the net that Jackson pays. Yes. So one thing to think about, and because the reason this is coming with contracts, right, for the board to consider and for the town to consider, is that if we have contracts, that's a fixed price. And so if our cost per pupil changes, the open enrollment cost is going to change for us. And what Jess explained earlier was that contracts trump open enrollment. So what we're really talking about is, woo, maybe 3 warrant articles, okay, so brace yourself for it. There is a warrant article for a Kennett contract. There's a warrant article for a Freiburg contract, and there's a warrant article for open enrollment. Because we think that that will best position Jackson to educate our students in a financial responsible way in the moment that we are in state education. Because if we just, for example, if we said, well, let's just go in on open enrollment, all in on open enrollment, we're actually highly exposed to those changes of cost, and we don't have the responsibility and the oversight of our students. So it's about blending these things together. So as much as it's kind of head spinning to think of these things together, they do relate to each other. And the contracts really relate, and this is one of the reasons that we showed this, is like the contracts are actually a savings from open enrollment at this point. And for some time, they will continue to be a savings compared to open enrollment. We would love to be in the situation where there's a flip, right? Like if we suddenly have 50 students, and we could probably model that out to say, at what point would we be paying more for those contracts? And that's worth looking at. And right now, there's additional nuance, and I'm going to go there for a moment, which is this state right now is saying, even though we don't have a middle school or a high school, our DOE number is based on our grammar school, not on what we pay for when we send to middle school or to high school. Those numbers could change, but the state keeps telling us loud and clear the number they're going to use is our established rate. So we can all make arguments for why that's wrong. We can talk about towns that don't have schools. Why would that be? But at this point, that's what the signal that they're giving us.
Yeah.
So that's what we model.
I mean, we're modeling it on that. We
Yeah.
just have to be, I want to just clarify 2 things. One is that this board has not spoken about this. This is,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
actually, as Micah noted, this is a conversation that we're having now, being educated on what we've got. So, I don't care about saying we, because we have made our decisions.
Yeah, it's like, but we could be in a
So,
situation of having 3 warrant.
Right, yeah,
we
so I
move
just want to be
forward.
very clear about that. And then the other thing is just, in terms of that calculation, we did seek legal advice on this, because it would be great if we had, part of what's frustrating is there's no certainty on so many things. So, right now, we know what it's calculated at, but there is a possibility it will not be calculated at the same rate. So, that is that instability that is so concerning to us as folks who want to be fiscally responsible. So I just want to also highlight that clarifying questions are okay, but we're not going to do a big conversation. No, that's okay. That was actually a very good question to ask, but we will definitely have time for people to give input. But part of it is we're processing this also. So, but I thought I saw a hand up, so I just wanted to say if there's a clarifying question, you're welcome. If not, perhaps we can. Okay.
Okay. So key details. Current policy, we have 60 students. That is a cap for Jackson Grammar School combined classroom, which each student seeks enrollment does not exceed 15 students. So this is what our current tuition policy is. And it's $10,000 a student for staff. Student number 1 is comp, and student 2 are $2,000 each. That's already been reviewed by the policy committee.
So
Yes.
just to highlight this for folks, many districts already have tuition policies where they will accept students from other districts if they want to come. And that's something we actually looked at as a district, but we didn't know if we could get to a deal with Conway. So privately, a student can go to Conway right now. They have a tuition policy. It is different from an open enrollment policy, right? Open enrollment is mandating certain things of us now. And so separately, our board has been looking at this policy for a while because I think a number of us were kind of like, where did that number even come from, 10,000? Why are we doing that? How are we doing that? So we've been trying to make sense of this, and that's how we came to the open enrollment piece, separately from Micah. And I mean, I've learned about all of them, but they're all kind of coming together.
Yeah. So suggested policy is in development. What we're really asking for our board to consider is, should we propose an open enrollment as a warrant article? What is the percentage we want to set for outgoing middle and high school students? How we want to handle the tuition agreements? Transportation policy, like if we just keep it as it is, it's up to families if they use it. Do we transport our students if they go to other areas? What if it's on the bus route? How do we understand that? Capacity limits and admission rules, because if you have a warrant article for open enrollment, you can also set other structures, and how we communicate with families and taxpayers. I think there's one or two more slides, let me just check.
Yeah, I think we've got.
Is that right? Yeah, next steps. Is this the last one?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I think people want to answer this, but essentially,
Yeah, okay, got it. Next steps. Okay, so December, January, we are live. Here we are, we're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna vote on whether or not we want to propose open enrollment policy in the warrant article. If approved, the board is gonna draft that language with the SAU 9 and legal counsel to ensure legal compliance. The budget committee reviews it, evaluation of enrollment. I am recommending, and I've talked about this with, and shared this with the SAU, and with Jess, that no matter what, that we're looking at our enrollment drop and doing an evaluation of it by Jackson Grammar School principal. That we are doing exit interviews and analysis surveys and outreach, including grammar, middle school rationale, like what triggered them to leave Jackson Grammar School. Was it because of the grammar school? Was it because of the middle school choices coming up and being in position for them, for those families? We also, I believe, need to be looking at inclusion of all Jackson K-6 kids, regardless of their schooling decisions, in newsletters, showcasing updates and big news at Jackson Grammar School, and outreach and sharing where people can re-enroll. So if we're losing kids, how do we get them back? Not every family is going to necessarily want to come back, but I think we need to have an outreach. We need to understand why they're leaving and keep telling them, you're welcome here, you're welcome for everything we do, even if you're not choosing to come in through our door at 8:20, we'd like you to be here. Go ahead.
and if I could just add on that, I mean, I think we should be doing that for K through 12.
Yeah, that's great.
Because it's been
Yeah.
highly educational for us, any one of us board members, I remember has done this. Any family, any student who I personally have found out is not participating, I've tried to gather information to why, what's happening. I think we should be doing that, regardless of open enrollment. Why are we, if someone doesn't want to be part of our community, what happened? We should be looking at that.
I recommend we look at these next steps and we talk about them as a board as to what we want to do. Does that sound good, Melinda?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we would be January, article, language finalized, public hearing, annual district meeting vote, assuming we wanted to move forward on this. If it's approved, we would start implementation planning, which has to include a campaign by Jackson Grammar School to actively recruit the students. So if we're going to do this, we want to share that. We want to make sure that we are recruiting students so that we can say proudly, we would love to have you come to Jackson. What are the ways that we can openly recruit, not have a quiet policy? And then the policy takes effect for the new school year in July. So the last thing, and then we'll come back to that slide, and I spoke a little bit about this, is how do contracts and open enrollment work together? So contracts with Kennett Freiberg provide oversight. The contract with Bartlett also provides oversight, right? So this is how that stacks. These are the schools that our kids most normally go to, and we have that financial stability. Open enrollment allows us to accept students and increase enrollment for a more thorough Jackson Grammar School experience and to support the grammar school's ongoing financial health. So that's what we're really looking at. So I'm going to go back, and then I would ask, as a board, hopefully I gave you more information than we need, and hopefully we could have a conversation about what we want to do here.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Let's just talk initially, like first impressions, because I know Nicole and you both have done a lot to educate yourselves. So is there if anyone has anything they want to add, questions, things, let's do that first before we move on.
I just want to say thanks to Micah, Michael, and Jess for putting this together. This was really deep in the financial impacts, more than I had seen, even through the webinars and the research I had done on my own. So that was super helpful and laying it out for everybody. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and credit to you really, Micah, because this was sort of your project. And I do want to highlight this next steps. It's convenient this slide is up because this next steps is really about full transparency, because we need to, I think, as a board, be very clear about any intentions we make for anything. So that, I think, is very helpful to say, like, how and when do things have to happen in order for them to move forward. And one of the pieces of information we have is that there are a number of districts that are considering this, and it is a good time to turn to our own SAU, because one, we also should be thinking that, because Amy and Nicole spent time going through this with us. We talked about it in policy meeting. We also they vetted this presentation for us. So, but it is, I think, very controversial topic, right? And I think, you know, as partners, it's important to consider, you know, the direction the SAU is going. And I do, in full transparency, will point out, if you look at the minutes from our policy meeting, our policy committee has asked that the SAU take leadership on this, because essentially this wasn't something we really wanted to do, but we felt like we don't have time to wait, because March is coming fast. And there are many districts that are considering this, and we don't know which ones are or not. There, you know, there are risks to it for a variety of ways, but one concern I personally have is, how is this perceived by other districts, even in our SAU? Because we're already sort of been villainized by certain folks, and I will say it now that we can talk, I think unfairly, but, so it's something to consider. Melinda?
So I think there's so many different issues wrapped up in this that it makes it super, super complicated. Our enrollment is low, but at the same time, we have an awesome school community, which is meeting the needs of our children, and as you can see from the test scores, which are not the be-all and end-all by any means, our kids are doing really well. So if we go forward with open enrollment, how do we make sure that we maintain that community? And I think it's going to take a ton of work. I think that we have to hit the ground running with some type of a committee or something to, it's not just about opening our doors and letting kids in. It's much more complicated than that. And it could be a good thing for our community. We could have more kids in the school, which, you know, would it's great for kids to have more kids to interact with. But at the same time, the whole piece with the surrounding towns and their perception of us and we're going to be taking kids away from other towns, and they're going to have the same problems. So it's really hard. It's really hard.
I have to say, it's an awful situation to be in.
Yeah, I think so.
So, but it's where we are. We don't really have a choice in that. You know, one thing to consider is that because I don't think we can do this well without significant input from Erin and Amy anyway. One possibility is we can ask to get a warrant article prepared so that it has the policies included in it, and that would give people something substantive to respond to, and would be pretty time and efficient as far as moving forward. What do you think of that?
I think the warrant article is the basement, and it's kind of the foundation for everything else that we need to discuss, the meat and the potatoes of the values of the town, the committee, the school. That will end up in the policy discussion more than the warrant article. The warrant article just gives us the ability to set limitations and be in a protective posture for financial purposes, which we're required to do anyway, to have a budget line item for both things. So it seems like a no-brainer to me to have it as a warrant article, and then and a policy is very changeable. So if we find a policy isn't working for us, we can either restrict or open it up further, depending on, and in my opinion, like an experience working for government, like regulatory agencies, it's better to kind of like start small, box it in as tight as you can, see how it goes, and then open it up from there based on how additional information comes out. But I think putting it on the warrant article in the first place is the first step to being able to look at any of this.
Nicole, I thought what you said was perfect. And so I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with preparing a warrant article so that we can explore this more and be prepared as the next steps in the kind of regulatory environment unfold.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so any discussion on that?
So we are discussing whether to move forward with our warrant article that would make us an open enrollment school. Right. You know, that's basically what we're saying.
But as I understand it, it could potentially say we're an open enrollment school, but we will accept 0 students and we will send 0 students.
Correct. Which speaks to what you said about starting very small.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yes.
Right, I mean, one of the things that blew my mind is that you can set the cap between 0 and 100. So that gives total control to the district that adopts the policy.
So if we, awesome, I love thinking about, and I agree, Nicole, with your framing, that's how we start. I think very soon we're gonna have to talk about what are those provisions, and my understanding is that the warrant article does stipulate some of those percentages. And so getting clear on that from our attorney and the SAU, is the warrant article is just to adopt to be an open enrollment school, or if some of those percentages are hard-coded in that warrant article versus the policy.
They are in the warrant.
They are.
in the warrant,
They are.
okay, so it's not specifically via policy.
That's correct.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, so that means that we have more work to do
Yeah.
than just a warrant article. It's to say, what are those percentages? And I agree with you, Nicole, I think starting small would be a great way to do it. I would encourage us to not be looking at 0 and 0. I think that that is an overly protective stance, and I think that we have a voting public who are rightfully very concerned about their tax bill and about the increasing tax bill, and this is one of the only levers that we have access to, and if we don't use it, I think it's being irresponsible.
One thing that we've gotten sort of early notice of is that there are some model warrant articles that may be coming out by January. So one thing we could do is approve the motion, come back in January with a text that is the model, and then debate and make decisions about the specific topics. Because really, it feels very complicated, but there are some very simple decisions, right?
Absolutely.
Do we have a warrant article? Do we have a policy? Do we have open enrollment at all, right? Number two, how many students would we allow to leave? What percentage? If we allow
For all
students,
those reasons, I think we should wait and vote in January.
When would we have to have language solidified for the warrant article? Yeah, at our hearing in February, which translates to school board business is we have exactly one meeting to have a conversation and make a decision about it during that time
right,
versus.
without special meetings.
Yeah, without special meetings. So I just,
I mean,
I'm sorry, go
preparing the
ahead.
warrant article doesn't mean we're approving.
Yeah.
It means that we've got meat to address, right? That we've got substance to,
yeah.
that people can look at and we can say, this is the reality of what it would look like. Right now, it's a little bit of a vague concept.
So
in some ways.
we'd approve sort of a warrant article like a shell, and then we'd fill in the details next month?
Well, just to be clear about my motion, my intent was to initiate a process by which the text of the warrant article, of a proposed warrant article, would be discussed by the board at some meeting in the future, hopefully our next meeting. But I'm not, in making that motion, I don't presuppose any of the details. And just to kind of explain more about where my motion came from, I think that not having a warrant article exposes us to too much financial downside, and it could be kind of ruinous for the school budget.
Yeah, I see that.
So I think that, thinking with my budget hat on, I think that having an open enrollment scheme or policy or whatever is essential for our finances. But I don't think that I know enough right now to imagine what that would look like.
Is there a way that we can do is to say, how about in January, we come back with sample warrant article language and maybe Michael and I can work on kind of some different scenarios, like what if we had 5% leaving, or, kind of what some of these could look like. So kind of if what I'm hearing in general is we're not gonna go, let's accept 60, let's fill Jackson. It's more like, what would it look like if we brought in X percentage more kids and we limited, and maybe we could have some of those scenarios. Because I'm really worried that if we don't have a starting point, we're not gonna get where we need to be in January. And in January, what we need to do is say, this is what we wanna do.
I agree.
And I don't wanna be asked for data that then,
Right.
Right, no, and I agree with that.
And everyone should be involved in these
Yeah.
conversations about if we're gonna open enrollment.
yeah. That was my next thing.
So I sent draft language across, but you'll decide on the language or what you're including on the warrant in January to then go to your hearing in February. So.
So we have to decide in January.
I mean, we would have, if there's any chance of us to move this forward as something that could be a warrant article, we'd have to do something tonight.
I see.
That's what I'm hearing.
But with the percentages, we would need to know what those percentages are tonight.
No, not tonight.
Okay,
January.
okay, so,
I think essentially we can approve his motion and say, we can consult with our attorney again, we can run some numbers.
and then I
work
can,
with Aaron.
because I would love to work with Aaron and Amy to say what would some, of what are these scenarios that would actually work for the school that we would say, this feels like a comfortable amount that we could admit.
Like, what do you think? I'd love to know from them, like, what do they think as far as how it would operate? I mean, I understand that everything's got to be on a warrant article, but effectively, we're not making decisions about operating the school day to day. You are the ones that are doing that, so, and managing our students, so I definitely would want to hear from them. So we could essentially move this forward by, and we can go back in January and say, we're electing to do nothing, right? Something can come out between now and then anyway. So, but in order to do anything at all, we would have to do something tonight. So,
But we not really do something, we have to move forward on James's
and
motion,
in
but
fact,
we
we have a
also,
task list.
we have to have a task.
Yeah. So let's just confirm what are the tasks that need to be done to get us to a
Well,
comfortable
do we
place.
have enough information to vote on the motion? This has all been under discussion
Mhm.
of the motion.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a question for all of you. Does anyone need any more information to vote on the motion? Okay, so, then let's vote. All in favor?
Nicole?
Yeah.
Yes.
all opposed. So that was unanimous. So,
So
to
for
be
tasks.
clear, so to be clear, it is to get clarity on what it would look like, so that we can further discuss and debate it, and make a decision of what to do to go forward from there. So this is essentially just one step. We would certainly want to keep an up-to-date, eye towards legislation and the law. So that's something that I'm certainly happy to do.
I'd like to propose that that you and I can work on this, and we can bring in Michael for some of the modeling on that, and also connect with Aaron and the SAU to think through what are workable scenarios. Is that possible?
I think that sounds fine. Why don't, to keep it simple,
Yeah, when you say workable scenarios, what are you referring to? The percentages?
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron, it's a bottom line for you to say, what's envisioning, that you would say, look, it would be great, we could have a provision, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could say X percentage, we could increase our enrollment by X percentage of the grammar school, not to exceed Y percentage per configuration, right? And like what would feel genuinely comfortable, so that it wouldn't trigger additional costs or wouldn't trigger additional burden. Some of the additional, there are other provisions that aren't in the warrant article language about specifications, like what that process would be,
right, I mean,
that I don't think need to be decided at this point.
no, but I think it's something that we should grapple with, because regardless of whether it's open enrollment or just accepting students, it hasn't become an issue yet, but that law allows for selection criteria, and I think that's a very tricky, slippery slope, and so we have to figure out what that would mean, and really, what does it mean in terms of numbers? What works within your community as a school? So, and that also gives us an opportunity to engage with you guys to say, like, this does work, this doesn't work. We need to hear that from you all.
I agree, Jess, and I just want to check in on one piece. I think that this could potentially have some ripple effects that, for those of us who are really passionate about the future of public education, may not look so good, and so I want to make sure that this board sort of learning more, educating itself, and moving forward with a potential approach to this new wrinkle that the state has given us. What it essentially does is it puts the town in the position deciding, right? This board isn't deciding on a policy, this board is potentially letting the town watch us discuss and deliberate and learn, but then in the end, the town are the people who decide. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
I
thank you.
mean, but I think you're raising a very good point, and part of what I think this does is it forces the hand of our community, our greater community, to engage in this conversation, because up until now, I think we felt like we couldn't get the conversation started. And that's really the most important thing that needs to happen, regardless of any outcome of the warrant, of whether we even decide to put one forward, because these are really serious conversations. I mean, one of the things we talked about was, you know, is there a way to work together with all the districts in our SAU to do something like this, right? I mean, this isn't about competing with the districts in our SAU. It's, you know, it's about figuring out how to respond to a lot of very difficult threats that are coming at us. And as we're about to go on to our next topic of budget, how do we manage the education of students when we are looking at the numbers we're about to look at? So to answer any concerns that folks have about us coming with like a preconceived notion, I think the goal here has to be education and essentially keeping up to date on what's happening, because it's changing day to day, week to week. You know, and I mean, we make a decision, say, let's just hold, but the important thing is that we're educating folks. Okay, so Mike, you're going to take lead on this.
Yep.
Okay, and you'll work with Aaron and Naomi, and I'm happy to support on anything you need.
Yep.
I'm mostly focused on the legal stuff, but
That's great.
just call in whoever you need, but the goal is to come back with language that we can discuss.
Yep.
And see what we do with.
Yep.
Is that
When's our
enough
next
direction?
Yes.
When is the next meeting?
18, 17, 19, something like this. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's on,
It's on the holidays.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Supposed to be the 19th, but that's a
Got
holiday.
it. Okay.
So, we'll talk about it. So,
Right.
all right, are we ready to move on?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, so next up, we have instructional issues. Consider first reading of policies. So over to you, Ms. Nicole.
All right, first reading, I'd like to make a motion to approve for first reading and send a second reading the contracted employees policy. For this one, we added workers' comp, corrected health plan deductible numbers, added expectations for number of days worked for non-contract employees. So we kind of made the same updates to the next three policies. So we'll start with the contracted employees policy.
I'll second that. Wait, sorry.
Contracted or non-contracted?
Starting with contracted.
Okay, it's just listed non-contracted first on your agenda.
Oh, it is?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
non-contract.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I took my notes wrong. Sorry about that. So, yeah, we'll start with non-contracted employees first.
So any
And you
discussion on
second
that? Yeah, I second it. Any discussion on that? No? All right, all in favor? Okay, that was unanimous. Okay.
Okay, next policy to motion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the first reading, send to second reading, personnel policies for principal. Similar changes to the last policy discussed.
Second. Any discussion? Any, all in favor?
Next item, make a motion to approve for first reading, send to second reading, contracted and personnel policies for contracted employees. Similar changes to the other policies.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
And then lastly, make a motion to approve first reading, send to second reading, GCEB, rate of pay for substitutes. That one was mainly reorganized for better flow, not a lot of major changes, but it just didn't make sense to me when I read it, so I wrote it in a way that made sense.
I second that. Discussion? All in favor? Okay. That was unanimous, Melissa. All right, second reading, we'll move on to consider second reading of policies.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve second reading of AB, which is New Hampshire Parental Bill of Rights,
Second,
which is a new policy as written.
and essentially required.
Yeah.
All in favor? Unanimous.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading of BEDG, meeting minutes as amended.
Second? All in favor? That's unanimous.
Motion to approve second reading of EHAG use of generative artificial intelligence. That's a
Second,
new policy as well.
any questions, conversation? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous?
I'd like to make a motion to approve second reading for JICJ, unauthorized communication devices.
Second that. Any discussion? All in favor? That was unanimous?
Motion to approve second reading of policy JRA, student records and access.
I second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That was unanimous.
Motion to approve second reading of policy JRA-E, student records and access.
I second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. We're almost there, Nicole, keep going.
I think that's it.
Oh, that was it,
Oh,
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Our next policy meeting is January 12th.
Thank you very much, and I just do want to comment, Nicole has spent a great deal of time and has done a really wonderful job leading that committee, so thank you, Nicole. And for those who are interested, there are minutes from these meetings, so you're welcome to take a peek at them, and sometimes it looks like we're just approving things without any work being done behind the scenes, but we get these things ahead of time, so. All right, I will consider a motion on our Nordic
How can we
school.
make a motion to elect Colin Hogue as a middle school Nordic coach?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? All right, that's exciting. Fun, okay. All right,
Good.
I was gonna
For
say let's do
budget.
a third presentation, but no, let's do the budget instead. Okay, so, budget status report.
So there's not a whole lot of stuff going on right now. The biggest costs for the school district are personnel. We have encumbered all the all the middle school and high school tuition payments and benefits. Right now, the bottom line is looking okay. There's a couple of individual sections that are over, but right now there's about 10% of the budget remaining.
Okay. Any questions? All right, so let's get to the review, proposed 26-27 budget, or do you want to talk about the tax rate now? Choose your own adventure.
Why don't we review the upcoming budget, and then maybe in finance committee, we can answer questions about the tax rate.
Super, great. All right, let's do it.
Do you want to take the floor, Michael?
Yeah, I don't know how much detail you want to go into in that. I didn't have any handouts, but basically, a week and a half or so ago, it went
Can you
through.
use the microphone? Oh, yeah, take it. Thanks.
So we met about a week and a half ago and went through the budget. Currently, the draft budget that the board has is with contractual updates. One of the most significant increases that we've talked about for the last couple months is health insurance. What we budgeted for the current year was 8.5% over last year. We got kind of surprised in April with our health insurance carrier going out of business, had to put out an RFP. We secured similar coverage. It came at an additional expense. So all those budget lines are overspent for this year. We have budgeted for the estimated increase for next year. So those lines are all going to look significantly over what the current budget is, because they're based on different plans or different carriers anyways. The next biggest things, in the regular ed section, the high school tuition costs are up, as well as a little bit of a decrease in the middle school tuition, and those are calculated based on students, and we do try and estimate current and then leave a little wiggle room in there in case a student moves in. Whereas the high school is based on an estimate and then an adjustment for actual, so there's a few different variables in that one.
So Michael, people following along on page, on budget line number 56, will notice that the proposed budget for the high school tuition goes up by about $250,000 year on year. And did you have some information to kind of break down that number for us?
So there's multiple variables that come with the high school contract. Currently, it's a percentage of equalized value and ADM, and then it's kind of a blended rate between the estimated budget, or sorry, the adopted budget, and then with an adjustment for actuals, and that happens there's an adjustment for actuals based on actual expenses for actual number of students, and then a CPI adjustment too. So year to year, those change. And yes, this year, one of the other big things is that the total enrollment for the high school went down. So I believe last year's contract, it was based on about 680 students. This year it's like 623. So even though in some cases the percentages of the budget stayed the same, the number of students that budget is allocated over is higher. So that's the most significant change in this budget.
And do you have, we were talking about preparing some figures so that people could see, you were also mentioning that there's a roof replacement project going on at the high school, and that may be reflected in that line?
So that is not in this budget. So there are a number of roof projects going on. It should be finishing up next summer, but currently the tuition contract, there is a portion of that's a contribution to the high school maintenance capital reserve fund, and that's a set dollar figure. It's
line 58.
And that dollar figure is the amount that goes into that article every year is the same. It's 50,000, 59,000, but the percentage that each district pays varies every year based on equalized value. And then then Conway also has another trust fund, which is referred to as the General Maintenance Trust Fund. So that's a fund that the Conway School District only contributes into, but then when it's expended, those costs are allocated within the year that they're spent. So that happened last year. So the return for last year's actuals wasn't as significant as it had been in the past. So in many cases, there was a credit returned this year that was not the case. It was minimal.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second.
I'm just worried that Conway taxpayers may want more explanation about why they're being asked this year for 40% more, $250,000 more for that one budget line. And so taxpayers, I'm sorry.
For high school.
Thank you. Yeah, Jackson taxpayers may want more information, and so can you help us direct them to the right place to help them understand why that one budget line is so much higher?
Yeah, we can include, so when we present the budget, once the finance committee has had another couple chances to go through it, we draft that executive summary for you that goes to your.
Yeah, I thought that was gonna happen tonight.
We've only met as a finance committee once or twice, and we have another meeting coming up.
That's
We
right.
haven't talked about reductions or anything like that yet.
Well, okay, but on this particular point, we had spoken as a finance committee. I think you had stepped into a different meeting at that time, but I followed up with an email with Michael to kind of talk about this specific information. At any rate, I think it's really important that we be prepared to help Jackson taxpayers understand why there's that big increase and where that money's going. We're really, as I understand it, we're really only enrolling or preparing for less than 2 additional students, so that's not all going to tuition. And so it would be helpful to be prepared to explain that line.
Can you clarify for me, is it, so, it looks like the line 58, the maintenance trust share is actually,
We're looking at line
Yeah.
56. Line 56 is going from 619,000 to 868,000.
right, I just want to highlight, they refer to line 58, which actually looks like nothing's happening there. So
That's
this
what-
is actually money that's getting folded into what appears to be tuition.
Well, I'm confused. I'm confused on that comment. It sounds like we collectively have some more work to do to be able to explain to the Jackson taxpayers.
And we meet on Wednesday, so we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
Great.
And then we also have the special ed increase, right? Like so when we think about the top increases in this budget, and am I understanding that outside of normal, like the bigger flares are around special ed and that high school cost, is that correct?
That's exactly right. So as I looked at the budget, Michael was exactly right. There are some increases in health insurance, but actually those are really balanced out by some other decreases. So if you look at the net movers in the budget, the proposed budget would increase by about $400,000. We're working on reducing that by, we've asked Aaron to prepare some really potentially pretty deep cuts. But if you look at the big movers on this proposed budget that you have in front of you, the biggest line is line 56, the high school tuition. The second biggest mover is in the special ed tuition line, which is line 112. And one of the things that, as I've talked to people in the community about the affordability of JGS and the school budget and the changes that I think we all are feeling when we open up our tax bill, is I think it's important to notice that if you look at the big increases in the budget last year that we fortunately we supported, but I think we all felt some heartburn about, and the big changes in this year's budget, none of that money is money that the Jackson School Board has any control over at all. And I heard somebody in the last meeting mention something about, that at least when we send our kids to Kennett, we have some oversight over Kennett. There are maybe ways that is the case, but actually the Conway School Board administers the Kennett budget. So when we're sent a bill by the Conway School Board for Kennett tuition, like we have been this year, I learn about it with exactly the same information as you have right now. And the same goes for the maintenance fund and things like that. So I think that's an important thing that we're all sort of keeping in perspective as we understand the budget and the ways that it affects us all.
I have 2 follow-up questions. Where is the income in this document? So I know in terms of income, like after-school program, there's income. Teachers who tuition their kids in, there's income. So where, some of those different line items, where do those show up? And where will the open enrollment, which is state stipulated, no matter what income, also fall?
That would be in a revenue budget?
Yeah, do we not have the, I know,
No.
is that,
No, I mean, we need the regular budget before
can we look at an estimated revenue budget? I mean, one thing that I look at, especially when we're thinking about after school and the equity piece, I think it's important when we talk about some of those costs, like the way that the after school program was set up was having parents pay for it, so looking at how does that net out, because it's really hard to compare it otherwise. And when I saw some of those potential changes in those notes, to look at that, and I think it's great to be looking at it and say, where can we get tighter with the staff that we already have? It's also important to say, what kind of revenue has the after-school program been generating?
Yeah,
Even if it's nominal, it's important to have it, so I'd like to have that.
yeah, thank you.
Any other highlights for us?
Just to Mike's point, we only learned just today on a statewide call, where the state is suggesting or recommending that we add the open enrollment lines. So one would be to pay open enrollment tuition, which would appear here, and the other would be the revenue potentially received.
So when will we see a revenue budget, or could we see
We could prepare something
a,
for the next meeting.
I'm assuming the budget meeting, we can see it even sooner.
Well, that's Wednesday.
Okay, or it's,
So I guess one more thing to bear in mind, I want to express my gratitude, especially to Erin and Amy, who have been thinking about cuts that they can make. I think it's really, it's going to be a challenging decision for the community as we see what Erin brings to us in terms of cuts. And I think, Micah, it really dovetails well with your presentation. I think the community is going to have to grapple with the potential benefit of cutting some really hard lines from the Jackson Grammar School budget, potentially at the expense of revenue from students who might see the advantages of the program that Erin has built and want to use open enrollment to send their kids in. So we may be, I know Erin talked about hard cuts and cuts that she may not be able to recommend to the community, but is generously offering to the community. And so it's part of the position we're in. Ultimately, the community is going to decide, but the budget committee is really working hard to recognize the increase in costs that are out of our hands and to try to do as much as we possibly can with the part of the budget that's in our hands.
is there a way that we can get a visual representation of that difference? So Mike, can you give like a graph? Here's the budget, here's what our, here are exactly what you just said,
Yeah.
James. Here's what is out of our hands. Here are special ed costs, here are high school costs, here are middle school costs, versus this is what we can directly control. Because I think that it's one thing to say it, it's a whole other thing to have that handout when we have this meeting, to have a visual for us all to be looking at.
No, I mean, and one of the things I was thinking about was it would be really helpful to, I think it was helpful for us in our discussions with contracts to see what is the impact of this choice versus this
Exactly.
choice. So it would be really helpful for you all to help us visualize, most things are out of our control. And basically we try to squeeze something out of a pretty slim budget as it is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and there's always the discussion about like, well, slim down at the Jackson Grammar School, right? But as was pointed out before, there are certain sunk costs that we're paying regardless if we're open, right? And that's a separate discussion.
Just to put it in big terms, just exactly the point that you're making, the Jackson Grammar School operation budget has been essentially flat. We've seen the community shoulder about 50% increase in budget costs, $1.5 million over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And in broad terms, none of that money is coming from Jackson. All of that money is from outside of Jackson. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not important, but what it does mean, as Micah said something that really struck a chord with me at the beginning of the meeting, if the community decided to close the school tomorrow, those $1.5 million would still be the responsibility of the Jackson taxpayer. It wouldn't change at all. So that's pretty sobering for me to think about. As I contemplate going to the community with my hand out and saying, hey, I want you to support this budget, a big part of all of these increases in the last 2 years have been stuff that this board doesn't administer.
I think if we could share some of that visually, that would be really great. So is that something that we can have the SAU do? Can you give us graphs of the past 5 years of what have been our costs versus external costs, how those have changed, showcasing like what kind of, I mean, again, and Michael can share his, I mean, you have access to that data, right? That's sharing that the grammar school costs, adjusted for inflation have largely stayed flat. But talk about these other variables, because I think we need to be acknowledging to the town about our taxes going up. And it's like, that's where it came from. Like, everyone got a bigger tax bill, it was in the e-news, you got to see it loud and clear about those calculations. That was exactly what we voted on this past
Right, I
March.
mean, that was a discussion we already had. And
Yeah.
actually,
But you don't feel the impact of it
yeah,
until it happens now. So now, but again, the more we can, in really clear visuals, they help me. I think they help most of us follow along. So I would love to see that we have that at the January meeting, like very clear.
and I
Bar
agree with
ration
that. I think we
progress.
should be very specific in our requests to the SAU,
Okay.
because we can't be, it's, I think it's too hard and confusing to say, send us visuals, you know, so.
Okay, so I feel like I'm, James and
Maybe
Malia,
it's like
maybe
5
you as the
We can
policy.
work on this
Yeah.
on Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay, could you do that to think
Yes.
about how we could get, that'd be great.
Super, you know, because I think part of what we have to kind of visualize is, right now, open enrollment is something we have control over for the moment, at least to present it and discuss it. And it is yet another awful and uncomfortable thing to even have to contemplate, but that's the job, right? And so we just need data, so we can have an intelligent conversation about it.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, so, anything else on the budget as we go forward? What I'm
No,
hearing.
well, we're continuing to work. Budget committee meets again Wednesday morning, and really working hard to do everything that we can to meet the community halfway with hopefully some cuts, and also with the knowledge that some of those other prices are going up.
And if anyone can think of revenue generators, I mean, I did see some ornaments for sale, that might be something, but, you know, I mean, we have to have whatever we can be creative, cuts are hard. So, okay, so that's the proposed 26-27 budget. Let's turn it over to the administrators.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick, we've been here for a while. Just a couple things to highlight. We had our Christmas concert last Thursday. It came for at a perfect time in our community. And I just want to commend my U18, because if you have the privilege of coming to one of our concerts, you'll see it's a real group effort. We have Ms. Weeder, who does an excellent job with the chorus and music. Art, Ms. Davis supplies the art through the children. Madame Klein works with the students throughout preparation in French. So our students, K through 6, are able to stand up there and sing a song in French, which is beautiful. So we have a very strong U18, and we're very proud of that here. So I just wanted to highlight that. Next week, we go on our now annual trip to the Adult Daycare Center and the Gibson Center, bringing that joy with us. So we'll go there and sing to the residents, which is pretty awesome. So if you ever have the opportunity, we try to advertise our concerts and things like that ahead of time, so spread the word in our community. We'd love to see you there. And that's what I'll leave it at for tonight, unless you have questions about my report.
No, thank you.
I have one thought that I realized, because I saw in your report, Erin, it says notable trends or concerns, we would like to continue to find a way to increase enrollment, including finding ways to return our homeschooling charter students to their community school. And I know that's been a standing statement that you've had. So I wanted to toggle back to the open enrollment presentation where I recommended that between now and in the next 2 months, we're also supporting Erin to conduct those exit interviews. So if it would be okay with the board, while I'm working on that warrant article and those percentages and connecting with Erin to also ask and then have Erin that you can share with us in January how you are connecting with students who have left, what those exit interviews are, what you're proposing that we could do to continue to bring those kids back.
Maybe just a direction, how far back you want me to go?
I mean, I think you know, how far back in terms of how many?
I mean, I've been here for 3 years, but I can.
What I would recommend is that we actually are saying, yeah, for the past 3 years, since you've been here, how have you reached out to families that have left during that time? And then what is the status, what are the tools that you want to use going forward so that we have a standard exit interview process? And beyond that, it's also what ways are we going to keep in touch with the kids who have left, not to say that the door is closed, and those families to say, you are welcome here, and if you ever want to re-enroll, you are also welcome here. Can I, is that,
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to expand that though.
Yeah.
And we have a
and also high school.
Well, I was gonna say, we
Yeah.
have a family support liaison, who I think that's supposed to be part of her job, is that K through 12 support. I'd love for our family support liaison to take some leadership there and start to make those connections. Like, if we are, again, open enrollment has forced our hand to have that conversation, but it's a conversation that should be central to whatever we're doing, which is, if we think, and I think I just said this to you in our policy meeting, I was like, if we think that we're offering something really great, why don't we want to advertise it and let people know? Let's celebrate that, right? And it doesn't mean that we have to be, hyper competitive with folks, but let's do whatever we can to celebrate all of the good things that we're doing in education here in Jackson, and the vision and the mission that we keep talking about, and that would encourage parents and families to be here. And then when a family is choosing not to be part of what we're doing, let's figure out why. So maybe you can work with Erin and Amy as well, and to kind of, let's get essentially a mini plan on that. Like, how can we start to be very proactive about reminding folks they matter to us?
Jess, I love that idea, and I'm thinking about how well that dovetails with a lot of the conversations we've had today, whether it's around open enrollment or around really giving the community more information about changes in the budget and the importance of the value in supporting the school. And I'm also thinking about the really incredible work that the policy committee is doing. And so it seems to me that we're entering a new era in public education where we really have to prove our value to taxpayers and families and students. And it seems like we may be resourced pretty well to begin with the family support liaison, but we may need more resources. But it seems like a great place to start. And I wonder if also kind of thinking about the family support liaison role more broadly as a community interface as a medium-term goal might be useful as well. So I love that the conversation is starting. I totally support it. If there are ways that we need to resource it, we should. And I think that's really important in terms of the long-term strategic success of JGS.
Okay, so I'd like to make, you know what, Micah, because I know they're planning on leaving, unless you're gonna promise to stick around. I'm gonna make a motion that, Micah, you work with Erin and Amy to essentially come up with an update on what's been done with K through 12 families and students who are departing, and you decide how far to look back, but let's start to really be transparent about ensuring folks know we care about them.
So update what's been done thus far,
Yeah.
what's going to happen going forward with exit interviews and how to re-enroll and integrate them, and also creating a plan of how to advertise our school.
Right, and we might just have people say, I don't want to talk to you. I have had people say that, that's okay. We don't, but if we can get people to talk to us, I think we can learn something from them, and I think it's also going to help us. I think that was part of the family support liaison's role, so you can look at that and see.
Yeah, that'll be, I rely on you, Erin, so we'll do that.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Enthusiastically? All right, we got so many, so we'll take, James, all in favor of that? Thank you, Micah. Can I make a motion, you can't leave in March? Okay, all right, thank you, Erin, that really spun for us, but I think hopefully we're.
That's great.
Yeah,
It's
so
important.
Amy?
Sure, I just have a couple highlights. So Kennett High School have reorganized their Spanish and French honor societies, so they're fully, recognized service organizations now, which is exciting. I don't know if anybody got out to see the drama club's performance of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was amazing and really well attended, so we're proud of our kids there. Our outing club is back in full effect, which is something that's been a little bit dormant for a handful of years. So thanks to Corinne Reedy and Pam Playstorm for leading that group. And we're really excited about the work that Kennett High School student ambassadors have been doing. So this is a newly formed club, and they just have incredible participation. And recently, the nonprofit organization ADAPT provided staff members with provided 2 staff members to come to the high school and provide leadership training for our high school student ambassadors. So they focused on group facilitation, peer mentoring, peer coaching, and how our student ambassadors can use those skills in future student-led projects. And they have 2 follow-up trainings. I think the next one's in January, so that's exciting. We have 161 students at the high school enrolled in a winter sport. So while enrollment is declining, participation in co-curricular activities is increasing. And let's see, we had 3 students attend the New Hampshire Student Leadership Conference at the National Guard Training Facility in Pembroke. And so that was exciting too, that our students were recognized there. And 11 student athletes were also recognized for their contributions to their teams during the fall sports season. And those are awards that are recognized by all of the coaches within the division across the whole state. And they all vote to determine which student athlete is recognized there. In your packet, there's the Career Tech student spotlight with some exciting things going on in our Career Tech Center. The new welding station in advanced manufacturing. I don't know if you've come to check it out, but it's absolutely incredible. There's 12 individual welding stations that are all now fully functioning. So multiple students can be working on multiple projects at one time. And then our construction trades kids, although they were delayed slightly by the snow, are putting the finishing touches on an equipment shed that they've built for the sports equipment out by the lacrosse fields. So it's all hands-on, real-life experiences that are happening with Career Tech. So come on by and visit. That'd be fun. And then just on the open enrollment piece, I do sit on a statewide legislative committee, and North Country superintendents are meeting. We typically meet once a month, but we're meeting weekly as a result of open enrollment and all of the things that are happening across the state. So lots of changing things that you've already spoken about. The landscape is definitely changing. There's definitely a lot of concerns and a lot of questions that still need to be answered that we're working collaboratively to figure out.
Yeah, anything you can do to bring back information for us. I mean, I think this really is an ever-changing landscape. So.
Even just today, there was a new obstacle to overcome that we hadn't considered. So we're meeting again on Friday as a result.
I love the addition of the photographs. That was really nice.
Yes.
For those who don't know, the Career Tech Center is starting to send home photos of students to families so that they can see their kids and things that they've got an award or they're doing something, so that they kind of get like that moment, which is nice. Yeah, it's a very nice community. So.
And there was a great picture in the paper of some of the Career Tech kids as well.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
I don't know.
Okay. Whew. All right. So board member issues. We essentially talked about all the policy and finance committee. Is there anything anyone would like to add on those two? It's on the agenda. Okay.
Just briefly on finance, we all opened our tax bills this week, and maybe we're a little bit surprised. And so I wanted to just briefly remind everybody in the community of something that I reminded myself of, which is that the discussions that we had tonight about the budget and that we're having around high school contracts and open enrollment and all that stuff, that was not reflected in your tax bills. The tax bill was a reflection of decisions that were made in the town meetings last spring. So, so the process is kind of, we as a town all vote on the budgets, we vote on the town budget, we vote on the school budget, and then tax rates are set at some point later on, and then we all get our tax bills and discover what the impact was.
And just on that point, we did have an email from the town because they're getting a lot of chatter on the issue. So they just had asked us if we could give them an update explaining the increase. So I'm happy to send an email. I want to defer to the finance committee if you would prefer to do it, or Amy and Michael. And for those who don't know what was just passed out, do you want to explain that, Amy? Because we just had a visual without explaining it.
Yeah, so, and this was shared with you just today, so if you wanted to reply to the town with
Yeah.
this information, feel free, or we can do that, or the finance committee, however you want that to go.
Yeah, so essentially, we just had a request, as we all can imagine, several of our town officers have been inundated with calls from upset taxpayers seeking an explanation for the significant increase in their tax bills. Obviously, there are multiple contributing factors, but one of them is the school tax rate, which increased from $2.08 to $3.54, an increase of approximately 70%. So they asked us for just an update on why that was, and I think he has a good understanding. I do want to just say thank you to Michael, because I immediately said, hey, if you could just concisely just help me to summarize things I think that we already know, that would be great. And I came back immediately with this chart. So
Yeah, and just to clarify, like the two numbers that the town gave, there's two components that make up the school tax rate. One's a local portion, the other's the state portion.
yeah,
So they mentioned the local portion, but there's also the state portion that contributes to it. So I added them together on this spreadsheet.
Okay.
And I mean, I can tell you what they are separately, but they together is how they go together to determine the tax rate.
so maybe I can just vet my response through you so that it's clear.
Do I read this correctly that our school tax rate was $6.19 in 2023 and then it dropped to $3.13 the next year?
Yeah, if you look up to the top, there's the assessed value.
Uh-huh.
So there was a reval around that
Oh,
time.
that's why.
So
The value went up, the tax rate, so that is not actually that people were paying that much less, it's that,
Correct.
got it. Okay.
And actually, you're highlighting something important, which is that we neither control special ed costs, nor do we control the tax rate. But we are responsible for answering for them in these meetings.
Mhm. And so when there's a reval, then that also, yeah.
And also, just to point out, the budget that your current tax bill, the one you just received, is based on the budget you approved last spring.
Right.
So, and then the one we're currently working within. So it's a little bit different than the timeline of the town, right? And also, this time last year, when we were building the budget, we estimated the school portion of the tax rate increase to be $4.75, and it actually came out to be $4.61. And that was the budget voted on by the taxpayers last spring. So that wasn't a surprise. I think when everything's lumped together, right, then it kind of, and we forget that we had those conversations, it comes with a little bit of a sticker shock, but we did estimate it to be approximately that.
I think it'd be helpful inside of this, I mean, I'm seeing that the elements here are operating budget and special ed, and then the trust funds. But I think the operating budget, for what James was talking about, what we can control and what we can't control, is not delineated here. Right? So
yeah, I was asked to.
I totally understand.
Okay.
I totally get what you were asked to do, Michael. I'm just saying that I actually think is even more important, because it's not that our budget went, I mean, yes, I understand our budget went from 3 million to 3.9 last year, but the reason is not because so we need to keep this education campaign going, and the raw number does not do that for us. So I think we can still make it a one-pager, and we can blouse out the operating budget to say this was where our line item increases were for an overall flat operating costs for the grammar school. Because that's where we're getting the scrutiny the most, is around the grammar school budget, and I don't, let's not make it hard to make good choices. Let's make
No,
it
and
easy
I
to
think
see.
we have to start to make it very clear to people. There are things we're legally responsible for, we're out of control of, and this is what they are. The
Yeah.
things we can control, this is what they look like.
Yeah, but right now, I can't see daylight into this, so we might know that, but that's not enough. So I'm asking for that to get,
Yeah, so we can make that part of what these guys are doing on Wednesday.
could that get accorded
And,
as a verb there?
Yeah.
Thank
Mike,
you.
it reminds me, I think you helped make an FAQ for the budget each year.
I'm not doing that this year, because I'm doing the
Linda!
other thing, but
Linda,
Nicole
Linda.
or Melinda could help with the
All
FAQ.
right. Well, we're gonna put it out there, that if whoever feels like they want to bring an early holiday present to Micah and me, we can think about that. So, because I think that is very helpful to taxpayers, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just, I think that's a great idea. I don't want to belabor this point. I'd like to recommend that we ask colleagues who are not on the budget committee to prepare the questions, and the budget committee would be happy to prepare the answers.
Okay.
But sometimes I think on the
Yeah.
finance committee,
I can
we get so much in
Ooh,
the
Nicole!
weeds that we lose track of
Yeah.
what the, what the curious things are.
And I think we actually have a pretty good template from previous years. So
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
start with that, we can add things.
But again, the more visuals, the more pulling apart we can do. I love this idea of what we can
Yeah,
control.
so let's make sure we bring that to January so that we can start to prepare that document.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, we're moving along. So the date for the next school board meeting is Monday the 19th, which is,
Which we have to move.
we have a holiday. So
Or,
let's just confirm,
Usually we meet the next day.
can folks meet on the
Tuesday.
20th?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm free. So, everyone good on the 20th? Okay, so is that okay with you all? Good. God bless you. All right, so we'll move the meeting to, our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 20th. Besides that, there's a finance committee meeting this week. We've got the Jackson Policy Meeting will be January 12th. Are there any other meetings? Oh, good question. That we should be aware of? Yeah, I mean, there are a number of them. We just want taxpayers to know.
Finance, where is that one? No.
Okay, and just to round out, I'll draft a response, and I just want to read it, Michael and Amy, just to make sure I have the numbers correct, okay? And then we'll send it over to tax, to the offices, okay? Okay, so, also, this is just a reminder to folks that, there are some really important dates coming up, filing dates for office, January 21st to January 30th of 2026.
Woo, who's gonna run?
I know, Micah, so, and as folks don't know, Micah her term is up, and she's not running again, no matter what.
Melinda, are you running?
So,
Yes.
Okay.
yay.
Sorry for jumping the spot, but that's also, I
Yes,
think it's
that's
important to talk about.
Melinda's spot is also up, I'm pretending it's not, but,
All
so
right,
there are
awesome.
2 spots that will be open, and we need good people, as you can see, this is hard work, and.
Well, we've already recruited Melinda.
Yeah, I mean, Melinda, don't upset us, definitely, yeah, so, last day for petition articles will be February 4th, there will be budget hearing on Thursday, February 5th at 6 p.m. Our annual meeting is Thursday, March 5th, town elections are March 10th, town meeting will be March 12th. So with that, we will turn it over to citizen comments. Oh, yes.
Two other,
Not with that
dates.
whole-
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Just to go ahead into February, you're gonna need to reschedule that regular
Meeting as
board
well,
meeting as
yeah.
well, because that is also a holiday. Is that third Monday?
Oh, President's Day.
Yeah, so,
Can we do the 17th?
The next day.
yes, so.
That's February break.
That's, yeah.
That's
I'm
fine.
not,
That's February
well, actually,
break.
I will weirdly be here on the 7th, so I can actually be here.
I will not be there.
There's also the 24th, February 24th.
Does that work? Are there weird things about
we have to meet at a
certain time because of the shenanigans that all go around? So,
Yes, all right, so you want to just hold on that
Yeah.
February date.
If we can make the 24th work with all the election dates and things like that, I think, can everyone make the 24th?
Yes.
But we'll double check that, but, I think we can. And then the next SAU 9, and it actually happens to be SAU 9, SAU 13 joint board meeting, where we'll go over the program of studies for Kennett High School is, January 8th at 6 p.m.
And I want to highlight for the community, if you want to learn about what is happening at our high schools, especially Kennet, because it is a Kennet moment, go to that program of studies night. That tells you everything that they're doing with the program of studies K 9 through 12, changes that are happening, additions, deletions, things like that. So it's a great night to ask questions to really get yourself informed. So that will be the 13th, the 8th, yes, sir.
Does February 24th give you enough time to get ready for the March meeting?
That's what
That's
yeah,
what we're going to double check that. That's
My
what
primary
we're
work also.
Yeah, we're very concerned about that. So that's what they're going to check to make sure timelines line up.
And legally that it lines up.
Yeah,
That's what it like happens.
because I know we have like a 10-day pre, so, yeah. So we will double check all of that and we'll get back to us, Amy.
Yes, your budget hearing is February 5th already.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of posting the annual reports in enough time for the annual meeting, but we'll double check.
Okay.
I think it's only 7 days.
Okay, thank you. Citizen comments. Okay, we will, I suppose we go first, and one go left.
Ladies,
Okay, just a reminder for anyone who speaks, we generally try not to respond to comments.
Yep.
It doesn't mean we're not listening. And then we won't respond at some point.
So my name is Courtney Wrigley, I'm a Jackson resident, and I helped at our last gathering, and because I didn't feel like I could speak, I just really wanted to speak. I know it's been a really long night, so sorry. This is way too much, oh my gosh, thank you all for what you're doing, but I have to say, open enrollment, I wanted to share as a parent of 3 Jackson Grammar School, or 3 Jackson Grammar School kids, and in this community, I am already feeling like open enrollment, this train has left. You say we're here and you're early, you're gone. The thing that we don't talk about in Mount Washington Valley is the Woodland Charter School. Has been taking kids in an open enrollment way for a very long time. So I actually want to say this opportunity, though there is risk, is a great opportunity for both JGS, but also for our public schools in SAU 9. The curriculum that our family experienced transferring from John Fuller School to Jackson Grammar School was seamless. Illustrative mathematics, fundamentals, that's not what it's called, foundations. My fourth
That's actually
grader,
really impressive.
my fourth grader is flying academically. And we need to tell that story about public schools in SAU 9 being the strongest schools for what they are. Individual families make individual choices, I understand. However, in the paper, among parents talking, it is not that narrative. SAU 9, we have missed that opportunity. And I say this is an opportunity to actually bring that back in. It's not the one politically that I thought I would be on the side of. Please don't have this conversation here in town saying that we're destroying public schools. This is like already happening. And I know you have to weigh all the things, but please think about what is already happening in the Valley. And I think there's opportunity here. Students will be entering Conway Middle School, I think, doing well. And I just want to say that because it's really close to something I think this Valley has missed in its conversation about education. High school options. We asked for choice, and I just want to say, you delivered, school board, thank you for negotiating so well these 2 comparable contracts. I really hope that you recommended both, but I hope that we can figure out something that those are both in front of the voters, and personally I would say I support both of them. I would want my family, I have a young 4-year-old, so it's a ways away, I want him to have that choice. Again, never thought choice would be there, but I just thought it was horrible to be accused of things in the newspaper the way that this board was and individuals. You, those folks who are already making that choice in this town could continue to do so with no mind to the rest of us. My family would not be able to have that choice. We're nonprofit employees. We are not going to. This idea of choice, again, not something I thought we would want, but there's precedent for this. Upper Valley in Vermont, in New Hampshire, Vermont area. There's small towns. We are a small sending town. They already do this all the time. And so it was not something familiar to me, but it is not about which school is better. It's really about negotiating 2 great options. And so I just want to say thank you. I'm sorry that that is out there being talked about because I was just really unfortunate and not okay. We asked you to do that, and thank you. So And I'm sorry I'm talking too much, but I have to end with the, I've been in Conway, we're North Conway residents for 10 years, and some of the conversations at the political level of the school board is about negotiating hard things around budget and about middle school. And I just want to say that does not reflect on administrators. I think that SAU 9 educators and administrators are just fantastic. But that kind of rhetoric, and we saw it a little bit here in our town last time, I've been in those meetings where it has been scoffed at different things happening at Bartlett Middle School with Jackson Bartlett students about how they can actually use that to their benefit to negotiate a middle school increase in Conway. And I'm saying, I'm doing the accusation again, but I can tell you the school board date that I was there when that happened. It's just not about the quality of education. We have to balance finances, and I understand Conway's in a difficult spot. I was there for 10 years. We are too now in a difficult spot with a high budget, but just please, it's not the place that I want you all to be going, so I just wanted to say that publicly. And then there's just a lot happening with all of this, so I think we need to move forward with the open enrollment, but you can also please look into a special school board meeting, special school board public meeting, something like that, not a public meeting, but if you can't fit it all in and it's gonna get too confusing with a huge budget conversation, the high school options, and potentially, like, think about that. Can we wait a couple more months to get through some of it so that we know that we can have that other meeting in the spring? Okay, I think that's it. I just want to say thank you. I hope to offer some sort of public community conversation education meeting with hopefully a few other folks who had to leave tonight, maybe in late Jan or February, so that we could have a little thing that's more towards what we had last month and even more informal, where we can have people talking at tables with a presentation. Because this is definitely too much for the average person to be able to understand. So we need to think of other educational ways for the Jackson residents to understand what's happening, because it's a lot. So thank you all for what you do.
Thank you. Other comments?
Andrew Tullis, president. You were talking about comparisons between two contracts, two schools. What would help me is, I'm a numbers guy. All right, give me specific metrics on how they're doing on standard tests for like the last 3 or 5 years. So I know the school increasing, staying flat, decreasing. That helps me understand more about the school, because I don't know anything about either one. All right. You're talking about contracting, and I think Micah mentioned that depending on what we do with open enrollment or not, it could impact, we might end up paying more for tuition at one point. What you might think about there is a tiered pricing in the contract that says the first 25, we give you this amount. If we do over 25, anyone over 25, we get a 20% reduction. That incentivizes them to, us to send more people down. So that's another thing that you could do. As far as the voting on these contracts, I think it is going to be complicated. And I'm not clear if it's majority vote wins, meaning one vote more, one vote for more than one vote against means it passes, because for those that aren't clear on what's going on, they might exclude warrant article 1 and vote on 2, which means they're actually saying no to 1. So being clear on what those votes mean and how you're grading, if it needs a 60% or just a majority vote, I think needs to be clear, because that is going to be complicated for people, all right? Especially for anyone in the town other than the 20 people. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because that's, I think, my point.
Thank you. Yes?
Keith Henry, Jackson resident. I just want to thank the school board, and parents of one of the participants on the North team. I want to thank you for your support I'm sure Coach Mike here can echo, you guys have been great. Jess, you talked about the ornaments that the kids created to raise money. We raised over $600 just in those ornaments. So I want to thank you. And as I know, all the board members here in Jackson have a Christmas one. I just wanted Amy to have one too. Anybody in Conway School Board wants to purchase one, they're more than welcome.
I'll bring them, I'll sell them.
And students made those.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yevon Glazier, I'm a Jackson resident. I want to start by echoing what Keith was saying. I also have a student on the Nordic team, and I just want to thank you all again for supporting that. There are 14 kids. It is an amazing, like, pretty 50-50 split, I think. Mike can double check me on that, between Bartlett and Jackson. It's so fun to see the enthusiasm again. I haven't seen that many middle school skiers on any team, I don't think. Don't check my map. But since I moved here, and it's really exciting, and it's great to see them all out there. I know I asked a couple weeks ago about the school board looking into recouping some costs around that, and Amy, I know you nodded along. I didn't know if you were just like listening, but I wondered, I know that there are line items for our tuition that goes to Bartlett, and then Bartlett has an athletics program, and whether they have, 8 teams in a year or 2 teams in a year, I don't know where that money is going or how to find it in their budget, or if part of our tuition to them includes the expectation of athletics, and they're not providing those athletics, can we ask them for some support? I'm happy to fundraise with the best of them. We had a great time. I now have Keith's super amazing chocolate cookie recipe, which I am eating nonstop. But as a taxpayer, I see in the budget line that we're paying for a line item in our town taxes to go to Bartlett Rec. Some of Bartlett Rec supports the athletics program at Bartlett. As a taxpayer, we're paying for our middle school students to go to Bartlett. Bartlett is supposed to run athletics. We're paying for part of that. And now, as a parent, again, I'm fundraising and spending our time and materials, and the family and the students that raise that money, those parents are using their own funds and their own time and the students' time, which is great. But as far as recouping some costs, like, I'd love to see it come back to us. So can you, I know you don't respond, but I did ask 2 months ago and I haven't seen it. I want to ask again.
We just need roster information, which I imagine Erin can get us.
Yeah.
And then we can, there's currently no line item in the Bartlett budget for Jackson, but they do have a similar line item in their budget for Conway for co-curricular.
Oh, great.
So like when they don't field a team in Bartlett, there's an agreement, which I think will be ending. I don't know if it'll be ending. It still needs to go to the board for discussion, but there's lots of conversation based on feedback received from Jackson about wanting to bring sports back to Bartlett and not outsource them to Conway. So we can look into that, but we would just need rostering information and percentage of students participating and that kind of thing, and we can see those.
Thank you. That would be amazing. I wanted to also put in a request. Amy, I know that you do an update from Kennett, but you don't typically give information about Bartlett.
I usually include it and I forgot.
I thought it was in this comment.
I
Or is it
noticed
in our packet, but I don't know.
I will make sure. Phyllis does a principal's report similar to the other schools, and I've been trying to include it. So that was my oversight if it wasn't in this packet, but I'll make sure to include it.
Thank you.
And for those who don't know, we've really been getting wonderful reports from Erin. We do usually see something from Phyllis, and then from Kevin, and often from Joe Rinsdale from the Career Tech Center, sort of giving us updates on things. So if you're not finding them, let us know, because it's helpful to see. So
I know it's a bit late. Just had 2 quick things I found. So the last one is just a tech request. I looked around the room. I could kind of tell I'm not the only one on my phone trying to read the budget, and I know we're not printing them out anymore. That has like gone away for lots of reasons. It is maddening to try, and I didn't know if there's a way to make it more user-friendly for the phone, like cell phone user to be able to look at the budget, but that would be awesome. And then I just wanted to give a huge thank you to Michael Cordius. Like, I really appreciate the time that he's put in, along with Courtney and many other parents, but I just, for those of you that don't know, like Michael and his wife are both like full-time, have full-time jobs, and 2 tinies that are in kindergarten and like 2nd or 3rd grade. So it's awesome that he spent so much time. So thank you again.
We recruit him for the board, but he's Canadian and he can't run.
I know, and that's amazing too.
So
He doesn't even get a sign. He's still showing all the time.
I know.
Any other comments from anyone? Yes, sir.
Sorry, one last thing I wanted, that I'm interested in. You talked about what the different schools have available as far as enrichment programs. I'd like to know, not what they have available, but what their participation levels are. Because if nobody's interested in it, and I care about consistent participation, not people who show up once and are never interested again. All right, because if they have programs nobody's taking, they don't have a program. So that's another metric I forgot to mention that would help me understand.
Thank you.
Just real quick, Mike Duflo, Jackson resident. I was just gonna say thank you for moving slowly with open enrollment. I think that we can get maybe hypnotized or real excited when we're like, oh, like look at the tax dollars go down with more students coming in. But I just think there's a lot of factors at play, especially in a town. Like I remember 5 years ago when our enrollment was at like I think 52 and COVID was happening, and I remember talking to Gail when we were sitting outside and our eyes gazed up at the sea of empty houses in the hills, and we're like, if all those homeowners come here, we have like nowhere to put any of these kids. Like if those 5 houses all move in, there's like I'm dusting the 2nd floor, and then the 2nd floor, you know. So just I think something to think about. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances, and so while I think the warrant article is a great idea because it gives us power, and it lets us choose how we move ahead, just really to not get caught up by how exciting it can be to bring our tax dollars down and think about the bigger picture. So thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. You guys have done so much hours of work. I have a couple comments. I was on the first committee to look at options, and one of the criticisms in the paper is we didn't look at Gorham. We looked at Gorham. The consensus among parents was it's just too dangerous to have young drivers driving through the notch, after-school programs. And the criticism in the paper has been kind of disheartening. We have a right to explore different options. Many decades ago, we tuitioned for kids in Blackbird, so I think a lot of people don't know that. As far as open enrollment goes, I would just say be careful what you wish for. You could end up with a whole lot of behavioral kids that disrupt the apple cart of, this thing you got going on over here. As much as I'd like to see my taxes go down. But we live in one of the oldest demographics in the country. The enrollment is down countrywide, not just here. Something to think about in the future. It's not going to get any better. The other thing is, where are you guys? There used to be grades that were combined, right? Because I hear a lot of old timers saying they can't believe how many staff works at the grammar school. There used to be combined grades. Do we just not do that anymore? Because it seems like there's a whole lot of staff over there.
We do have combined grades. K1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6.
So is that why, that's the question I hear all the time. Why are we so staff heavy for such a few, for such a handful of kids that really make up like a classroom in a bigger school? So.
That's something that we address in those FAQs for the budget, because it's a question that we get, it's like, why do we have to have this staff? And then Erin has done a really good job of lining that out. So, sorry, I was responding, but I think it's helpful.
We can go so far. I got you.
That's as far as I went.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so it's definitely something on our mind. We'll make sure that we're responding to that. It's a question that we do ask.
Can you guys put up on e-news when your next meetings are? I think that open enrollment and this complicated high school thing is so much to ask the voters to comprehend in one, I mean, you're talking like a couple of months to decide this open enrollment thing. So if we could get dates and maybe another meeting like we had last time where there's more public questions. Before 9 p.m.
Yeah, you just reminded me, we'll continue to make an effort, the documents and things from tonight, and anything we have, we'll try to make sure that's going out. We'll keep trying to send letters to the e-news. We don't get a lot of coverage in Daily Sun for things that they necessarily send in, but we do get some coverage, so we're grateful for that. We will definitely hear and consider everything everyone's saying. And I think one big theme we're getting from everyone is continued community engagement. So we'll talk more about that and how to do that early and often in January. And maybe we can talk about how we might do that with, if there are folks that want to volunteer to help lead some things. I do just want to say that if you are here and you're understanding something, it would really help us if you can help other people understand it, because we can't be everywhere with everyone. We're trying our best, but you might be able to explain it better than we can. You just now you explained a number of things better than I know I could. So, so please do that. And if anyone wants to help us, we welcome that. Anyone else? Comments? I would like to thank everyone here, but mostly I would also like to thank my 2 children who've been sitting here for 3 hours. Who just came to support their mom and sadly.
Don't you run for public office?
All students, but I'm going to say that's my answer. So, and thank you all. I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
9:06.
Yes, and thank you. Happy holidays to everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you for being here.